Y'all, we're starting. Thank you. Welcome to the Hendersonville Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting for November 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. We're going to begin our meeting as we typically do. That's with a prayer and the pledge. And I'm going to ask Alderman Dr. Eddie Robertson to lead us in prayer, please.
Shall we pray? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Dear Lord, we offer you thanks for all of the good things you do, and we recognize above everything your power and your goodness over us. We pray, dear Lord, for our fine city and its citizens, dear God. Some of them are sick, some of them are hurting. Some of them need your touch tonight, dear Lord, and we pray that you will touch the needs in this community. Amen. Dear Lord, we pray for this board tonight. Help us to conduct ourselves as you would want us to. Help us to be civil. Help us to be reasonable, dear Lord, as we move forward. Dear Lord, we thank you for your many blessings again, and we thank you for our first responders. We thank you for our military. We just celebrated Veterans Day, dear Lord, and we thank you so much for their willing service and their sacrifice for our freedom, dear Lord. Let us never fail to give them the thanks and the praise that they are due. Now, dear Lord, we ask all of these things in your name. And we all said, Amen.
Alderman Robertson, thank you. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. See that everybody's in attendance. I'm going to entertain a motion to accept the agenda. We have a motion from Alderman Hayes and a second from Alderman Robertson. A couple things. I want to make sure that we acknowledge that we have 8 items that do not follow the 2-week delay. We've got those in there. Also, I would like to add an executive session at the very end after mayoral report. Hopefully that's really just for information purposes, I believe. I don't think that's going to take more than 10 minutes. Okay. The reason we're doing it at the end is that way we're not going to have people that are waiting for us to come back. At that point, that's all on the agenda. When we go to a separate room, just the 13 of us and our city attorney, the people that want to leave are quite welcome to, unless they want to stay and watch us adjourn. So I'd like to entertain a motion that we add executive session as item 14. I have a motion from Alderman Edwards and a second from Alderman Cunningham. Can we go ahead and vote on that one item? All those in favor of adding item 14, executive session, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Alderman Robertson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would like to make a motion to move item 10. We have several, to the first item on the, right after or under section 8. So move item 10 to 1.
We have a motion from Alderman Robertson, a second from Alderman Petrelli. Any discussion on that? I see a couple of lights lit up. I doubt that you want to discuss this, or am I wrong? Okay. All those in favor of moving item 10 up to ahead of item 1 under ordinance and resolutions, please signify by say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes. Alderman Karen Dixon voted against that. So far we have a couple changes. And Alderman Robertson, anything else?
No, sir, that's all.
Appreciate that. Let's go to Alderman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 7, Mr. Robertson's ordinance was deferred from committee, did not go through committee tonight, simply because there was several questions that needed to be answered, and some from about some other department heads or departments possibly being added to that. So we deferred it, and it is going to go to Finance Committee on the 23rd of this month. And Mr. Robertson, could you be there to answer those questions for Ms. Cunningham and her committee, please?
Go ahead, Alderman Robertson.
Well, yes, I can be there, but I see no reason to delay this. I first brought this item up
at a budget workshop, our first budget workshop back, I think it was in May or the 1st of June. I can't recall, but it was in, and at that time, there was no questions raised. The staff has worked to implement this, and I don't want to put it off, because if we put it off, that means that our policemen and firemen that have really served this community with an extraordinary amount of courage and bravery and personal sacrifice during this time will not be able to receive this bonus by Christmas. And so, if there are other, and I understand that one department head is lobbying to expand the number of employees that would receive this, and that's fine, but that needs to be done under a separate ordinance, I believe. I don't want to delay this, Chairman Brown. I appreciate you asking me that question. So I would like to move forward, and I know that we would need 7 votes to do this, but I don't want to be a Scrooge and to put off payments to our policemen and firemen any longer. Like I say, this has been on the agenda for BOMA for 6 months, and we've all known this is coming, and so I would appreciate at least 7 votes of the aldermen to keep this on the agenda tonight. I mean, we know what the impact is. This has no impact on the budget. The only impact, this is going to be refundable from the federal funds that we're receiving from COVID. This is a clear example of an allowable expense. Many of us went to a workshop in Gallatin conducted by our legislative delegation where the comptroller was there, and he clearly said this was a clear-cut authorization, so it has no budget impact, but not moving this forward tonight means that our policemen and firemen will not receive a Christmas bonus by Christmas, will not receive a $1,000 bonus by Christmas. So with all due respect, Mr. Brown, I cannot support this motion.
Alderman Brown, anything else? Appreciate that. Alderman Skidmore.
Thank you. I was just sitting here looking at the rest of the agenda. Okay, I got you now, number 7. Okay, let me put a little circle by that. Thank you. I would like, just for a few minutes tonight, if it's all possible, to be added under reports dealing with the American Rescue Plan Act that we had a workshop last night, which I got to say, for the ones that were there, almost everyone was able to be there. I recognize some of our schedules, people up here cannot make that, and I recognize that, but I want to let not only the ones that were not able to go, but also to the public of what is going on with us with that, because that's a very, very important issue that is recognized by us, but it's very important for the city of Hendersonville and it's in our constituency.
Chairman Skidmore, do you want to make that the first item under brief committee reports?
I'm loose either way. You can either put me last or you can put me first. Just.
Well, when we do this, you will be, yeah, that's fine. I think that's important enough to get out there first.
Okay, well, thank you. And I do appreciate it. It will not be long.
Okay. So
Famous last words, but
Okay.
I promise you it won't be.
So Alderman Skidmore would like to have an item, as the very first item under brief committee reports, and that's a report about ARPA funds. Is that a motion, Alderman Skidmore?
Please.
Thank you.
Second.
A second from Alderman Petrelli. Any discussion on that? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Alderman
you,
Skidmore.
Board.
Thank you. Okay. I do need to mention that the presentation, we need to withdraw that, and I'll explain that. What happened is we got some information. We received some information from Industrial Development Board, and they asked that we put that off. We had that same presentation in Finance Committee a couple weeks ago, and Industrial Development Board wants to be here for that. Some of their members would like to be here for that. So I'm going to make a motion that we remove the presentation. Do I have a second? A second from Alderman Collins. Any discussion on that? All those in favor of removing the presentation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Let me now go to Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. I can understand what happened at the General Committee because I was there in reference to Alderman Roberson's ordinance. But as a compromise, do you think we can have I'll put it before Finance on 11/23, on November 23rd. Could we have a special call meeting of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen the same night and have a first reading of this instead of holding it up and then have our second reading at our December meeting? This way we can still move forward with that ordinance and still be able to give our first responders the $1,000 bonus for the coronavirus. Is that possible, Mayor?
We canceled the November 23rd meeting, and I've actually made plans to be out of town. I'm not sure if other people did. I've got some plans with my kids.
I'm out too.
Okay.
We left the 30th open, though, in case we need
We do have the 30th open. You're right about that.
Well, would that be a possible compromise that we don't delay this ordinance? Because I concur with Alderman Roberson about delaying this, but then I can see where it needs to go before a committee, whether we recommend it or not. So we're kind of, I don't want to delay it at all. And I think that if we do something as a special called meeting, that Tuesday after Thanksgiving, that I think we could accomplish both goals.
Alderman Robertson, your thoughts?
Well, it has been to a committee. It went to general committee tonight. And this is a common practice when there is an item that needs to be addressed, then general committee typically fills the gap. No, I don't want to delay it. I mean, it's been 6 months since I first brought this up. Policemen and firemen are looking forward to this. I've had numerous of them tell me that this is something that they really need, and they appreciate this board moving forward on it. I'm not saying that I'm against giving all the employees. I mean, I don't know, but I don't want to hold up this ordinance. I want us to move forward on it so that the staff has plenty of time to cut the checks and to get them to our first responders by Christmas. So
Okay.
I appreciate the effort, but I really don't see. I mean, it has gone to general, and I know they deferred it. Committees from time to time defer issues. If there are any questions from the board, I am more than willing to respond and to answer those questions if you have any questions at all for me tonight.
He has some- he
Okay,
has some
thank you,
questions.
Alderman Roberson. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Cunningham. Alderman Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, in reference to the bonus for the employees, I would like to expand it to all employees. I work at a hospital that just received those same funds, and they gave a bonus just recently to all of us. If we had 1,000 hours of service in the year, we got so much money, and if we're less than $1,000, you got another amount of money. And at $5.9 million is the amount of money the city's looking at. If you're at everyone, I think you're talking, $340,000 total? I wish I had someone from, and if it was part-time employees included, you could do half that bonus to them, or something along those lines, just like the hospital did for myself and all the other employees.
We're sort of getting into the meat of the ordinance.
I know that, but I'm just saying, that's why it was delayed. I asked that question in the committee.
Okay. Alderman Robertson.
I'll respond. I don't think that all employees qualify under the federal guidelines that I have read. Now, I have not studied the
I think he has the opportunity to respond to why it should be on the agenda.
I'm responding to Alderman Campbell's. I don't think all of the employees, so if we give all the employees, for sure, that needs to go to Finance Committee because that would impact our budget and cause us to maybe not spend money somewhere else. So, if an alderman wants to make a recommendation to give all employees $1,000, then file your ordinance, go through Finance Committee, and, but this one has been circulating for 6 months, as I said. So let's not delay it. Let's move forward on this, and then if another ordinance comes up, we'll deal with that.
But we're talking about the $5.9 million, correct? That is the federal funds that are
Yes.
given to us. So
Yes.
basically, it's not impacting our budget at all at the moment.
Correct.
So if we expand it,
It's still not impacting it that we know.
Let's do this. Let's talk about that information when we get to the ordinance.
Okay.
Is
That's
it-
fine.
Okay, I appreciate that,
Yes, sir.
Alderman
Okay.
Campbell and Alderman Robertson. Alderman Campbell, anything else?
That's it, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Just wanna
Thank you. Alderman
Clarify it for him.
Alderman Edwards.
Okay, just procedurally, is there a motion before us to remove this item?
There is not.
Okay. I'm just trying to clarify the
Okay.
discussion. Thank you.
Appreciate that. So what we've done is we've had a couple amendments to the agenda. First is we're going to remove presentation about business incentives. We're going to move redistricting, which is item 10. We're going to move that in front of item 1. We are going to have an ARPA report as the first report under brief committee reports, and we're going to have an executive session, and we voted on as item 14. We voted on all of those amendments at this point. Now we just need to accept the main motion, which is setting the agenda. Do you feel like I have all that? I think we already have a motion to do that. Okay, Hayes and Robertson wants to make that motion initially. So all those in favor of the agenda as it's been amended, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Thank you all. So let's now go to, we don't have presentation. We don't have a public hearing. I'm going to entertain a motion to approve our minutes from October 20th. Cunningham. Alderman Peterson, discussion on this item?
I second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes as they were presented in your packet, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Okay. Next, we have citizen comments. Speakers must identify themselves by name and address. I'm going to help you with that. Public comment should be limited to 5 minutes per individual, which time is not transferable to other speakers. All comments are to be directed to me, the presiding officer, not to the alderman, city staff, or other members of the public. Comments must address issues, not individuals or personalities. Personal attacks shall not be tolerated. Comments may support or oppose particular issues or measures, but the motives of those with different views shall not be questioned or attacked. Malicious comments will not be allowed. Speeches for or against particular candidates running for public office shall not be allowed. David Mumey, Cherry Grove Drive. Oh, I got to do that. There we go. There we go.
Good evening, Dave Mumey. On behalf of all the members of VFW Post 9851 and Vietnam Veterans Chapter 240, we want to thank the city for all of its support for the Hendersonville Veterans Day Parade last Sunday. We couldn't have done it without the support of Chief Miller and all the policemen to keep traffic and everybody safe, and for the fire department to keep us safe, and for the participation of all their units in the parade. It was a great weather day, and it was a great parade, and I want to thank all the citizens that came out and participated in the parade. We had over 80 units, starting with a 9-plane flyover, if I can count that high, and we just had a wonderful day, and I want to thank all the citizens that also came out and lined the streets. I don't think there's anybody that does an official count of fans, but since I've done every parade, it was I believe it was the largest crowd we've had yet so far, and I just want to thank the city and the citizens of Hendersonville for all their support. Thank you.
Dave, thank you, and thank you for all your work on that, as well as the VFW, all their work. Pamela Surf, Evergreen Circle.
Thank you. I usually don't speak, but I just really felt compelled tonight to say something in regards to the redistricting. I've been watching the committee meetings, and I have really felt bad for the committee that has put this together. They have been so disrespected, and it's become territorial, which it should not. I think having a citizens committee was a great idea. It should go by the numbers, not who's in what ward, who's not, who don't I want there. It's just been so disrespectful to them, and I feel really bad about it, and I wish that it would get back on track to what it should be. Thank you.
Pam, thank you. Kay Brooks, Trousdale Drive.
Good evening, I'm Kay Brooks. I live at 123 Trousdale Drive, and I hardly know what to say. driving frantically from home as well as you can when you're on I-65 at this hour. I had no idea that the redistricting plans were changing again. It's like fluid. So it's almost impossible to comment because it keeps changing. This is the map that I like. I don't know what iteration it is or has become, but it makes absolute sense to me to have the peninsula separate, put this commercial district in its own. It has a little bit of residential, that's fine. So, as I said, I strongly support the districts, the peninsulas being in their own districts and not split. Why it was ever done that way is just a piece of foolishness we've endured for a while. And frankly, I don't care if you all are inconvenienced by this shuffle. I don't care if you have to adjust to new constituencies. I don't care about your serving. What I do care about is you serving the communities of Hendersonville. You and your office is not and should not be the deciding factor. Redistricting is not intended to be an incumbent protection plan. It is intended to fairly represent citizens of this city. Put your wants and needs behind the needs and wants of this city. To do less is to violate the trust you've been given by voters.
Okay, thank you. We don't have a consent agenda. Next, we have item 10, which is first reading ordinance 2021-48. This is an ordinance establishing ward boundaries for the city of Hendersonville based on the 2020 census. Is that where we are?
That is.
Okay. I so move. And a second from, who was it? Alderman Waters. Appreciate that. Any discussion? Alderman Robertson.
I've always got a little discussion, don't I? I do have some brief comments on this ordinance. Redistricting is a decennial obligation for government leaders to rebalance population of districts or wards. The term gerrymandering, or the drawing of wards to favor incumbents or a particular political party, has been associated with redistricting since 1812 in the United States. Typically, BOMA members have redrawn their ward boundaries during these times. But this time, we tried a different approach with redistricting. Our board voted to empower a diverse citizens committee to study the issues and, devoid of political considerations, make a recommendation on how to redraw the ward boundaries to this board. I want to personally thank the citizens that served on this important committee. Their seriousness, objectivity, civility, professionalism represented the citizens of this city well. Its creation follows my own philosophy that citizen input in government is instrumental in the successful operations of a democracy. The map that this committee recommended is a product of our professional staff as it followed the guidelines of the State Comptroller's Office. And I use these guidelines when analyzing and comparing the different options that we will consider tonight. The two options, and there may be more, but the two options that I'm aware of are the Citizens Committee's recommendation and the General Committee's recommendations. There are 4 reasons why I support the Citizens Committee's recommendation. Number 1, are the wards reasonably compact and contiguous? Or in other words, as cited by the U.S. Supreme Court, appearances do matter. Of the two options, the Citizens Committee versus the General Committee recommendation, the former, I believe, best fits this traditional redistricting principle and has far fewer irregular shapes. Number 2, equal population allocation. While both the Citizens and General Committee, this is important for you to make this statement, while both the Citizens and General Committee recommendations fit the legal definitions for allocation, the Citizens' recommendation is a far tighter deviation than the General Committee one. And let me give you an example. The smallest population in the general committee ward is Ward 3 at 9,713 population, while the smallest in the citizens' recommendation is Ward 5 at 1,002. The ideal population in both options is 10,292. So you see that the Citizens Committee has a smaller variation toward the ideal population standard. Number 3, it allows each peninsula to have its own alderman. The Citizens Committee recommendation does not have a ward that is separated by the lake. And the last, the process utilized by the Citizens Committee was perhaps the most transparent and open decision-making process that I have witnessed while an alderman. And for these reasons, I support the citizens redistricting map. Thank you to the citizens on this committee for their hard and conscientious efforts. And thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to make these brief comments. That's all.
Alderman Robertson, thank you. We've got two other people, Alderman Dixon and Alderman Waters. Alderman Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor. Am I on?
You are?
The objective of redistricting should be to draw the wards of equal population with our new census data. Wards that are compact and contiguous, nothing more. And that is what our Citizens Committee did for us. That's what they delivered to us. As for the General Committee's map, well, voters should choose their elected officials. Elected officials should not choose their voters, and that is what they're delivered to us today. That's why I'm extremely disappointed that any alderman's name and home locations are listed on any of the maps, and we received them in our book for this meeting. Should not be a consideration at all. Map B represents, at this point, politicians choosing their constituents. I will be supporting the hard work of this group of citizens put forward to us tonight. I thank you so much for the committee. Your work was without regard to any alderman, personal address, and that is how it should be. You did a great job. Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Dixon, thank you. Alderman Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. It's hard to follow these two, I tell you. But let me first say thank you, committee. You did a great job. You put everything that I could witness above everything else. You did your job, and I want to thank you. I enjoyed attending and watching the two meetings that you had. I think it was the 4th and the 20th, if I'm not right. I think it was handled in more of a professional and an orderly discussion. And I think Keith will agree they asked him a lot of important questions, and you were satisfied with his response. Thank you, Keith. I know this committee came to each meeting prepared to do the best for our city, not for me, not for anybody else, but for the city. I took notes on a few items they discussed and voted on. Here's the first one, motion by Hawkins to remove the discussion of four wards moving forward. Then they came back later with a motion to allow the discussion of 4-ward option. They came back and did that. Another motion by Hawkins to remove the discussion of 5 wards moving forward and to remove the discussion of 1 alderman per ward. Again, I saw the united togetherness from this committee, and I thank you. The vote, I think, on all these was 8-0. On the second meeting on October the 20th, the committee recommended by 8-0
Electronic.
vote 2 ward map options. Number 1, a vote to recommend the 4 ward map as an option for either now or in the future.
Number 2, motion by Hawkins to clarify that the 6th Ward map is the committee's primary recommendation, and 4 Ward map is secondary. Am I right so far, committee? Thank you. Let me move on. If I get my notes straightened out here. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I want to go a little further here. With all due respect for all the work the committee, planning department has put forward, I feel we have complied with the comptroller's office. Our growth since the last census tells me and us we are moving in the right direction. In saying that, I was able to review each committee's background when it was in the paper. I read them. I did not see anything that would allow me to think there was any politics in their resumes or in their going forward. I listened to the 2 meetings, October the 4th and October the 20th, and there was a lot of thought and debate on each discussion. I feel this board would make a huge mistake if we did not follow the redistricting committee's recommendation and accept their committee's 6th Ward map. Thank you, Mayor. I so move.
Thank you, Alderman Waters. What we got in front of us is ordinance, first reading ordinance 2021-48. This is a vote on the map that was presented by the redistricting committee. Alderman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also like to thank you for your work, that you spent several hours and put a plan together and made a recommendation. You know, recommendation is just that. It's a recommendation. It doesn't necessarily mean that you would follow that recommendation. You go to a doctor and sometimes you go get a second opinion because the first doctor makes a recommendation that you're concerned with. As the General Committee Chairman, when I called a special call meeting to review this, I did it because of timely manners. We have to get this done according to the comptroller, according to our election processes and everything else. So during that meeting, before that meeting, I asked Mr. Free to bring himself and JP and all the equipment because I knew he had been asked, and I asked some questions about numbers and maps and so on and so forth. We were not privy to that information until the night of the General Committee meeting. So that meeting was about an hour and a half long. We looked at the recommendation from the your committee and the redistricting committee and the General Committee did their own interactive map, and that's also included tonight in your packets. And I think we'll probably discuss it some more in just a few minutes. But one thing that I understand about redistricting, and it's not a lot, I don't know, I would think that when you all went on that committee, you didn't understand a whole lot either, but now you're well-schooled, there's no doubt. So I think all of us have become schooled in the past few weeks. This is the second redistricting I've went through, and I've learned more this second time than I did the first time. And so it's a learning curve, there's no doubt. But the one thing that I did learn, and I've heard said, and I believe, and I said it the other night, that when you redistrict, you do what you can to do no harm. Someone said, well, we don't, you know, you're worried about, no, I'm not worried about the alderman. You do no harm when you do redistricting because you affect thousands of people, not just a half a dozen aldermen. When you redistrict an alderman out of their district and they're being served, those folks are being served by someone they never voted for now, I would think that anybody in this audience would think that was a bit odd or not maybe the way it should be. Maybe you don't. Nobody moved me. I was in Ward 4. I stayed in Ward 4. So, but I've always believed that you don't do any harm. And I think if you look at the numbers strongly, I do believe that sitting aldermen should still be in their ward. I said that the other night. I'll say it again tonight. I'm not afraid to stand on that, you know. But I also believe that when you move wards as drastically as you did, and not that they're not compact and not they're not concise, not they're 10,292 target, everybody's on target, but there were some of them that was moved quite a bit. And I don't know exactly what those numbers are, but the original ward map and the particular new one that was recommended by the redistrict committee, I think there are several thousand different people there that moved around. Somebody else may have those numbers. So, but that's just my feeling. So at what time I would like to look at the general committee's recommendation as well to your map. So I'll probably have more to say later. Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Brown, thank you. Alderman Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. I thank the committee, too. I understand the hard work you put into this, and I appreciate it. I do have concerns about the map. I did call City Hall to ask if I could look at the interactive maps before our meetings. While you were having your meetings, I had called and said I'd like to sit down and look at the interactive maps. And I was told that I would not have an opportunity to look at those until this meeting. I said, I'd like to see a map that's better than this 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, bigger. So when I asked Keith Free for a copy of a map, I was able to get 2 foot by 2 foot map that actually had the street addresses on them. It still didn't have all the data that I was in need of. And then I called him back and asked again if I could see the interactive maps to study them and go over them. And he again had spoken to the mayor, and the mayor had told him to tell me, sorry, this is what you get, but we will print you this 2 foot by 2 foot map. So I called Mr. Eckenroth to see if he could help me out with getting to the interactive maps prior to any meeting. And I was told no, but I'm an elected official. We are all elected officials. This information, every bit of this is public information. The interactive maps are public information. Anyone in this room, if you want to come down here and sit down and look at that interactive map, you have the right to do that. We cannot just arbitrarily say no. So having said that, that got me a little riled up a little bit. But then when I found out that I was voted out of, or moved out of Ward 2, and then Lee, I understand, was moved out of Ward 2 as well, and I think some other aldermen here were moved out of their wards. I said, we need to figure out how we can correct this, do the least amount of damage to our wards. And then Lee, the Attorney General, Ray Whitley, he said that, a person should not be drawn out of their wards with a pen and a piece of paper. They need to be voted out. That's the proper way to do this. And I thought, that's true. And I was glad to see the Attorney General saying that, the District Attorney saying that. And that's why when the General Committee had their meeting, I came to that meeting and I sat down and I had been looking at the map, so I already had some ideas as to what to do, but I did not know the interactive map, as you move a cube, it changes the numbers, as you all know. You were doing it. And I was able to sit down and tweak that same map that you did. And we tried to be in a hurry about that, and that's why it was an 1.5 hour long meeting. I think there was about 30 minutes of talking prior to doing any movements. I think we did about an hour worth of movements, and some aldermen had to leave for various reasons. And we decided to stop at that point, and we came up with General Committee came up with a map that they're going to present this evening. And that's why I'm open to all the maps to look at them, but I was voted on by Ward 2, and I'd like to represent Ward 2. So I would just let you know that, and also I agree with our district attorney, what he had to say about taking people out of their office just by the stroke of a pen or drawing a line, a boundary line. So you can do that at the ballot box, and I certainly do appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Alderman Campbell, thank you. Alderman Collins.
I want to say also, like everyone else, how much I appreciate the work of the committee. I noticed that you guys were very professional and very concise, and I was jealous. I wish that we could be more concise from time to time. I think that you did really good work. As Alderman Dixon, I agree that voters should choose their elected officials, and elected officials should not choose their voters. It just to clarify the bias implication here is I live so far on one end of town that I'm in Ward 5. That's just all there is. You could not figure out a way to get me out of Ward 5 because of where I happen to live. I think that the committee, that you guys did really great work. I think you had a premise that, from my perspective, is philosophically flawed. I did not see it in the comptroller's guidelines that we would not consider where seated aldermen lived when we drew the map. It might be in there, but I certainly could not find reference to that as a guideline. And the reason, this is such a, from an academic perspective, this conversation is really interesting because we all agree on the same things, but it leads us to a different conclusion. I feel like because we don't consider, because this map did not consider where aldermen live, we're harming the voters. I don't see that a lake compromises your representation on this board. But I do, in the practical application of the boards that you've proposed, what would happen is, in 22, half of us, which is not me, would be up for reelection. And so that's when in practical application, that's when the wards would change. So then the other half of us are for 2 more years, we're still serving whatever ward we then live in, which has changed for some people, not myself. So my question that I asked myself is, what's the scope of the harm is managing that transition where as few people as possible are represented by officials that they never had a chance to vote for or against. And I did not have access to the interactive map, so these numbers are probably not precise, but by my calculations, the redistricting committee's proposal means that 14,804 people for 2-year period will be represented by 1 alderman that they did not have an opportunity to vote for. But when we consider where an alderman lives and we attempt to keep them in their wards, which is not always possible, my colleague Jonathan, the senior alderman for Ward 5, in the proposed map, he will no longer be in Ward 5. Ward 5 is huge. We had to shrink it a lot. And that is just sometimes necessary, sometimes. But in the version that came from the General Committee, there are 3,982, approximately, voters that will have a representative, 1 representative for a 2-year period that they did not have the opportunity to vote for or against. Those things harm your representation. You don't know your alderman, you don't have a connection with them, they don't know you, you didn't have an opportunity to vote for them or against them, as the case may be. That is what we mean when we say minimize the harm. That compromises your representation on this board. I don't see that a lake compromises your representation. It does not make for a pretty map. It's not contiguous as we would like it to be, but our city is peninsulas. It is what it is. 14,804 versus 3,982. I don't think that the map from the committee is completely perfect. It hurts me to lose Jonathan as a co-alderman, or assuming he were to be reelected, but it does less harm. And from a philosophical point of view, that's where I am with this. Thank you.
Without objection, we're going to hear from the members of the committee if you all have any questions. I would like the chairman, William Stiles, to give us a background on how we got to this point.
My knee popped. I was sitting there too long. Sorry about that. How are y'all doing? Good evening. My name is William Stiles. I was the chair of the districting committee for the great city of Hendersonville, and I appreciate you having me. I want to start out, before I get into how we came up with the map and how we kind of ran our meetings, with appreciation. I appreciate you for what you do in your service. Mr. Waters said that he looked at everybody's background, and I was a political science major at Western Carolina University, so I've got some background in politics. I served in Washington, D.C. with the great Congressman Heath Shuler. Some of you might remember that name, a great quarterback of UT. He went on to become the 5th worst quarterback in NFL history. But be it as it may, he was a great congressman. I enjoyed working for him. I'm a small business owner, last 10 years, and I love politics. I told the committee when I first got on the board, what you do here is more impactful than the theatrics you see on television on the national level. When I lived in Washington, we called it the Hollywood for ugly people, because that's what it was. It was Hollywood for a lot of ugliness. What you guys do is not that. So I just wanted to start out by saying I appreciate what you do. I appreciate the committee that we had. It was a fantastic committee. What y'all said should be multiplied by 10. These guys were on it every time. Philosophical discussion, like in-depth discussions is what they did. So I appreciate them. Keith did a fantastic job. Thank you, Keith, and your team, planning committee. Superb. Any question we had, whatever it was, they were on top of it, so I appreciate them. Eddie Robertson, I thank you for nominating me. Mr. Mayor, appreciate your support. I just want to acknowledge that there is some bruising on both sides. I understand what you're saying. There's some bruising on our side, too. And I would just like to end this meeting tonight in the hopes that we can bridge those gaps and come up with a solution that works for everybody, not only the citizens of Hendersonville, but also you. And I understand that. I've been in politics. I get it. You don't want to lose your seat. I understand. It does hurt sometimes. And so I don't want us to leave this meeting upset with the committee or BOMA. I want to leave this meeting bridging the gap, okay? So with that, I'm going to review how we drew the maps, how we use the comptroller guidelines, and then I'm going to entertain any questions you all may have. I think it was Mr. Mr. Brown who talked about how wonderful it was to read the comptroller guidelines. He lied. It was not wonderful. It was very boring. So thanks, Mr. Brown. I'm going to summarize it real quick. Directions to the committee members. Districts should be compact and contiguous. Excuse my Appalachian dialect. I can't say contiguous very well. Appearances do matter. Districts should enable citizens of a district to relate to each other and the representatives, and vice versa. Districts should respect communities of interest. Excuse me. Do not draw districts that intentionally dilute the impact of minorities. Was a lot of discussion about minority representation in the city. The minority representation that we have in the city is very broad, and so we fortunately didn't have to run into a lot of issues with that. You can split voting precincts if you have to. We didn't look at voting precincts. We looked at a couple other things like fire districts and school districts. Voting precincts, that really didn't make any sense. Looking to address current aldermen might generate bias in future decisions. So we did not look at that specifically for, some of you mentioned not having bias. We wanted to look at it as the map of Hendersonville, what's best for the city. Do not intentionally protect or harm incumbents. Meetings are public. Might submit changes to the number of wards. You might decide to draw 6 wards from scratch. Data will come at a block level. So Keith talked about that the census is in blocks, correct? And so it was hard to take a specific address or a specific street. It had to be in the census block. As a committee, we were to determine the number of wards, determine ideal population, determine allowable relevant deviations. Maximum is 10%. Okay? Keith, who knows a lot more about this and retired I don't know how many times from other planning services, recommend 5. So we took his recommendation. Review the staff controller's direction of minority representation, examine existing majority minority wards. I already addressed that. Determine a base, whether it be subdivision, existing wards, voting precincts, Natural boundaries, we did look at that a lot. Railroads, peninsulas. Provide direction as staff develop, so come to each meeting, provide staff direction, consider modifications, provide those recommendations to VOLMA. Throughout the process, we were to seek input from non-members, consult staff, determine staff meeting times and locations. We wanted to primarily avoid conflict of interest, provide diversity, have every ward represented, and allow citizens to lead the process, and have people that understand math. Now, I don't know why he got me on the board, because I don't understand math, but we did have Aaron Hawkins, who somebody mentioned several times, Mr. Waters, who was a former math teacher. So he did a fantastic job with that, didn't he? As you can see there, the map that we came up with, well, let me back up to the first meeting. First meeting we discussed the number of wards. So that was one of the discussion points, determine the number of the wards. We had a really good discussion about that. If you saw the video, we went from 8 to 6 to 4, and kind of Mr. Hawkins did vote 4 down. So we left this meeting with looking at 8 wards, 1 representative from each ward, 6 wards, keep it as it is, and 5 wards. I think that was the other one. After we got to the second meeting, it was obvious we could not do 5 wards because that would take us out of the grandfather clause. I don't know if you're aware of this. We have 12 representatives. 8 is the state guideline, and so we're grandfathered in. We talked about determining the allowable relevant deviation of 5%. We kept it at that. Review the comptroller's direction of minority representation and discuss the base for the wards. One thing I'd like to mention is when we went around and did a round robin and had a discussion, the first question I had was 12 representatives too many? And 7 to 8 said yes. And so one of the reasons why we picked 4 wards and 8 representatives was, what if the state one day says you have to do 8? Because they already have it at 8. Could be an option. So we wanted to be prepared for that, okay? Determine method for drawing the lines, and then we left that meeting and gave direction to the staff. The second meeting, Keith did a fantastic job of presenting what the staff had found out. According to the guidelines from the comptroller, he did draw that map that you see there that we came up with 6 wards. We made a few changes, but really that's basically it. I think we made a few changes maybe in Ward 5. How we figured this up was the comments we got from citizens was 2 peninsulas. Overwhelmingly, that was the comments that I got in the community. We had a nice young lady come to one of the meetings and say, I live in this ward, I'd like for it to be 2 peninsulas. So we started at the bottom and we worked our way up, and we started on the side and we worked our way in, and that's how we came up with it. As you can see there, we still had to split some of the peninsula, but all that is, I think, more commercial, and it is contiguous and compact, and then down in the lower peninsula area. We did, in the process of figuring out or looking at 8 wards and 8 representatives, 8 wards was way too many. It didn't make any sense at all. However, in the process of that, Keith did do 4 wards. That map was presented to you as well, maybe for future guideline, but that would be 8 wards and 4 wards and 8 representatives. So that's how we came up with the 6 ward, 12 representatives map, and the 4 wards and the 8 representatives. I would like to open it now to any questions that you have for me or for the other members of the committee.
Alderman Hayes?
William, thank you again. Thank y'all's committee. Appreciate you so much. Did a great job. I am curious with the proposal for 6 wards with Ward 2, it still splits the peninsula.
Correct.
I thought that was one of the main goals.
That's correct, yes. When we looked at it, we were looking at exactly what that area there was, and it's Drake's Creek and some commercial area. And so we were thinking, okay, we want the characteristics have to be similar characteristics, contiguous and compact. All of the lower peninsula has similar characteristics on each peninsula, and then similar characteristics for Ward 2. And so, unfortunately, it is split a little bit, but the bottom half of each peninsula is similar characteristics. Yes. It's a good question. That's a great question, because we talked about that a lot, and it bothered us too.
It's there's no doubt about it. The 4-ward map, it's a beautiful thing.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It's a nice map.
Everybody can agree on that, except maybe up on this board.
Exactly.
I mean, it is awesome. It
Yeah.
is so simple.
It's very simple.
So, regardless of which map we look at, the one the General Committee came up with the other night, the 4-ward, the 6-ward that the committee came up with, I'm in a different ward I got to move no matter what. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
And you know what? I'm okay. And I met one of the committee members tonight and just told her I can work in any of these wards, and I want to serve the city. I am a little bit concerned, though, just with Ward 2's, because it's so elongated from east to west. If we were to elect that map, and I was elected, I would be covering all the way from Stop 30 Road all the way down to Rockland Road.
Mm-hmm.
And both peninsulas.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem very contiguous. It doesn't seem very homogeneous.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my concern. But you know what? I will knock on every one of those doors too, just like I did about 6,000 doors in Ward 5. Ward 5 is too big, and that's gonna get changed here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I just appreciate you. I want to be, as always, positive and upbeat and selfless in doing whatever we need to do to continue to make Hendersonville the best city in the world. So, again, I appreciate the committee. I don't have any other comments right now, but I may in a little bit later. Thank you.
Alderman Hayes, thank you. We have nobody else wishing to speak. We're going to have an electronic vote. I want to say something real quickly here. Okay. Let me go ahead real quick. Thank you. Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you. When I said nobody else, I forgot I wanted to. So, we had a map prepared by Independent Citizen Committee. A couple of those people are here. There might be a motion to replace that map with one drawn by several aldermen. I'm hearing people appreciated the committee. The General Committee didn't even look at that map. Don't say you appreciate the work if you didn't even look at it and didn't even consider it. If we have a motion for the new map, really what it is a motion to throw the citizens map away and use the map drawn by aldermen to help aldermen stay in office. That map is a blatant disregard for the residents who elected you. You should have been more honest and just drawn a map 2 months ago with your preferences of which voters you wanted in your wards. Instead, you have wasted a lot of people's time and brought shame on this city. I propose the idea of having a citizens committee redraw the ward boundaries. State and federal laws require that we redistrict every 10 years. Those laws do not require that citizens lead the process. We had the opportunity to set politics aside. We had the opportunity to shine brighter than other cities. We had the opportunity to make history. By giving the citizens the opportunity to redraw the ward boundaries, we are saying that fairness matters more than selfish politics in Hendersonville. When I presented the idea to have Independent Citizens Committee, I told you that I had 3 objectives. That was transparency, swiftness, and being apolitical. You had the opportunity then to say that you disagreed. Nobody did. Now are you saying that you wanted the process to be driven by politics? You should have been upfront several weeks ago. When I said that I wanted the process to be apolitical, you should have disagreed then. You would have prevented a huge waste of time. The Independent Citizen Committee did their homework and met 3 times for several hours. They went through training. They spent an awful lot of time outside of the meetings. They followed the guidelines you insisted on. They adhered to the directions given to them by the state comptroller. The Citizens Committee members followed the law and gave directions to the staff. The Independent Citizens Committee sought your input. The Independent Citizens Committee sought input from all residents. In the end, they put together a map that addressed all the concerns they heard, and a map that was better than anything I had anticipated. The Independent Citizen Committee asked for your input. None of the people supporting that general committee map gave them any input. Then last week, several aldermen threw that map away. They continued to make changes just an hour ago. The map drawn by some aldermen did not even consider that the map was created by Independent Citizens Committee. Several aldermen created their own map. Aldermen said they needed to be protected from some voters. Aldermen said they deserved more respect. Quite simply, the map drawn by aldermen will make it easier for aldermen to stay in office and harder for new people to get elected. Aldermen should not draw their own wards. Voters should choose their aldermen. Aldermen should not choose their voters. When I introduced the idea of an Independent Citizen Committee, 6 of you voted against it. Your excuses were irrational. Here's a short list of your excuses. You said citizens don't have the expertise to draw ward boundaries. You said only citizens with experience should draw ward boundaries. You said the mayor will have too much influence on the committee, even though you voted on the members of the committee. You said that staff should drive the process. You said the process was moving along too quickly. You said that Citizens Committee would not be responsive to voters. You said we never allowed citizens this much authority. You said the Citizens Committee will be too slow. Last week, several aldermen drew their own map in the General Committee meeting. The same objections you raised about citizens could be said about aldermen who participated last week. The aldermen who participated had no expertise, no experience, moved quickly, and ignored voters. The exact same concerns that you raised about the Citizens Committee. The latest excuse is that aldermen did not have access to the software to draw maps. Aldermen had every bit of information that I had. The complaint is really that some people did not get to draw ward boundaries behind closed doors. If you did not want transparency, you should have said that a couple weeks ago. While aldermen were drawing their own map, I did not hear any of them say that they're concerned with creating a level playing field, eliminating the split of Ward 2, following the guidelines from the State Comptroller's Office, responding to input from residents, or creating compact wards. I didn't hear that at all last week. Obviously, it wasn't a concern. These items that drove the Independent Citizen Committee were not factors when aldermen drew this map last week. By contrast, the Independent Citizens Committee constantly discussed those objectives. They wanted to comply with the law, create wards out of the peninsulas, level the playing field, eliminate the split of Ward 2, follow the guidelines from the State Comptroller's Office, respond to input from residents, and create compact wards as they were expected to. By contrast, several aldermen said last week, aldermen should get to stay in the wards that elected them. Aldermen should not be harmed. Fixing the split of Ward 2 is not important. Splitting the peninsulas is acceptable. Aldermen should have been shown more respect. And they also said, we need to protect aldermen. This type of behavior is going to generate a reputation for telling citizens that their input is not wanted. Nobody told the committee that they did not want to be in a different ward. Nobody came forward and said, don't put me in a different ward. If you are making that claim, you're making stuff up. Nobody told the committee that they wanted to remain in the same ward. If you're making that claim, you're just making stuff up. Let me read a letter, from a letter I received from one of the members of the Independent Citizen Committee. He watched the alderman draw a self-serving map. He said there was no consideration whatsoever of community interest. He continued, instead of considering community interest of his citizenry and the compactness and contiguity of the wards, one alderman merely moved district lines for the sole purpose of preserving the current alderman seats. That's one of the members of the Citizen Committee that couldn't be here. Furthermore, he expressed his frustration that the Citizens Committee's work to create wards from the peninsula was ignored. The Independent Citizen Committee responded to requests to make each peninsula its own ward. By contrast, several aldermen drew a map which worsened the split. We heard that talk a few minutes ago about how long that is. When I asked one of those aldermen if he agreed that each peninsula should be its own ward, he flat out said he did not think it was important, even though that was the #1 comment we got from residents. This result is startling. By ignoring the Independent Citizens Committee, several aldermen made problems worse, and here's one. One alderman is justifying this behavior by misquoting our district attorney. He never heard the district attorney say that because the district attorney didn't say it. He wasn't even where the district attorney was speaking. It's flat out not true. Our district attorney never said that aldermen should be protected. Our district attorney said public officials should not do things that are shady. The alderman's map is shady. It's also not for me to tell, it's also disappointing that people won't tell the truth about access to data. I sent you the data and the links to all the data. Don't say you didn't have that. What you didn't have is you didn't have the opportunity to do work in a back room and away from public presence. The Independent Citizen Committee drew Ward 2 to be 4.9 miles long at its furthest points. This is Ward 2 that we just talked about. The Alderman's map makes that much worse. For people in Hidden Point, pushed into Ward 2 from Ward 4 by the Alderman's map, their homes are now 7.5 miles away from one of their aldermen. Not 4.9, 7.5 with the General Committee map. These residents that just got pushed into Ward 2 from Ward 4 with the General Committee map, these residents will pass 3 other aldermen's houses to reach their own alderman. But that is only part of Hidden Point. That neighborhood, according to the alderman's map, is now split in half. It lies in 2 wards. Those aldermen also split Berry Hill into 2 wards. On average, the wards drawn by the aldermen are 1 mile longer than the wards drawn by the Independent Citizens Committee. The aldermen didn't even improve the disparity in sizes. That was the whole point in drawing new maps, to create wards of equal size. The wards in the citizens' map were drawn within 2% of each other. The alderman's map made that worse. Their wards are further out of balance. The Independent Citizen Committee had the wards pretty equal in population. The alderman's plan replaced that balance with politics. If you plan to vote for the alderman's map, please be honest about the reasons. All the excuses have been dispelled. Quite simply, the alderman's map will make it easier for aldermen to stay in office and harder for new candidates to get elected. If you vote for this, I hope you understand that, and I hope you state that's the reason that you voted for it. Alderman Skidmore.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Appreciate everyone's comments tonight. Congressman Schuler was a good congressman. Is he still in real estate now, or is he just retired?
Oh, I spoke too long and got turned off on its own. Sorry about that.
I think he went on to lobby for Duke and then got into real estate. Yeah, I think he still lives in Waynesville, North Carolina, though.
Do you get to see him very often, or do you I'm just curious.
No, I didn't. Oh, when I worked there, I did. Yeah, we're in the same office.
I mean, now, I was just going to say that you got one, although I didn't live in his district, he had one supporter here in Middle Tennessee, so. And it wasn't because he was Tennessee football. I'm an MTSU Blue Raider, okay?
There you go.
So, my blood runs blue, so. Couple of questions tonight, and I know everybody in this room appreciates the efforts that you all did, and I also appreciate the efforts that my colleagues up here spent on this redistricting. I guess I look at it as a little different. I've been through 3 of these, believe it or not. And they're never easy because you're going to hurt somebody. You're always going to hurt somebody when it comes to redistricting. And and people have heard me say this, even some of my worst enemies, things were done, not on purpose, but it had to be done because the geographical location, and I've been hurt before. So I understand these things. On this particular map, I look at both of them, and even in both of them, there are people that I've represented for over 30 years, or at least are close to it. I'm starting to show my age a little bit now, but I'm going to genuinely miss them because there are people that their moms and dads were just being married, and a few years later on, they, and I could go right to their house, and they did this, and I'm just so grateful, but I'm going to lose them. But anyway, they said to me, so I'm not going to mention their names, but so-and-so and I are getting married, and they were high school sweethearts. And they were married, and then a couple of years after that, when I'm campaigning for my mother, I go to their house and campaign for Mama, and they're having a baby. And so a few years after that, I run for re-election, same house, and they've stayed there practically all their lives. And they tell their little bitty, their son and daughter this is the guy you're going to vote for, And I go, no, and I appreciate, because anybody that goes through that is not telling the truth if that doesn't make you feel good, And then I've had some that have said the quite opposite, some very colorful language. So, we experience this, local government, as you well know, and government with yourself, we experience everything like that. And I'm going to miss them because now the husband or the boy has married, and he says, you just wait. If I have a child, I'm going to tell him the same thing my dad did, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm not sitting here trying to pat myself on the back, because anybody that knows me on this board, I don't play that. I'm not that kind of person. I'm just a regular guy. And I'm going to miss them. I mean, I'm going to have to go back and go door to door, even though I just was very grateful winning re-election this last time, and I don't have to go door to door, but I'm going to have to tell them I'm skating. I'm going somewhere. I'm going northern, down to the north. But that's just a part of being a politician, being an elected official, being a local election. Some people will be happy. I can guarantee you that, so they don't want to see our mugs up here. And then some of them will be sad. But that, I just want to reiterate to you all and to the voting public, we recognize that, and it is hard. Sometimes it is heartbreaking when you take it serious. When you're an alderman up here, I don't know of an alderman up here that doesn't take this job seriously. I've been here since '87, and I don't know of one alderman, as I look back, the ones that have passed on and the ones that have been up here with me, that I've had the opportunity and been very blessed to work with. Even the ones that didn't like me, that's just part of it. You're going to get that. But they took this job seriously. And everyone that I'm serving with right tonight, I can tell you, and they will tell you the same thing. If I didn't think they'd take it, if they didn't take this seriously, I'd say it to their face. That's just the way I am. I'm no ifs, ands, and buts about it. So I do appreciate, my point in saying that is I do appreciate the General Committee's work, because I don't know that, I honestly don't know, and I wouldn't believe it if someone was to even say it, that they didn't take that map seriously, because they know how hard it is to work as an alderman. Every person up here, tons of people have said, when I was in my 20s and elected, my mom was the vice mayor here, and she looked at me, and I'll never forget it. And she hugged me, and we were at the old Star News, which is not even here anymore. And she looked at me and hugged me, and she said, "Your life is no longer your own now." And she's right. And she still is right to this day. I gave up my junior adulthood and my almost into my senior adulthood, but I'm not. When I say senior, I'm not going to tell you how old I am. But I've given my life to the city, and this is the first time that I do want to say this to the public, that I have seen that the citizens have taken a big step on doing something in redistricting that is so important, not only for them, but for the sitting aldermen. I do have one question. Were there any of the votes unanimous when it came down to your final, where you all were leaning on these maps?
Every vote we had was unanimous.
Okay.
Minus one, it wasn't a vote. It was more of a suggestion that there should be 8 instead of 12.
Okay.
That was a 7 to 8 vote.
I will say this, and I know this is not even in dealing with this tonight, but just in my opinion, with 20 to 30 years experience of being on the board, and very grateful for it. Listen, I've always been appreciative of the votes that have come out of the city. People are smart, they're bright, and they know their politics. Let me tell you something. What's the old saying Frank Sinatra used to say? You can make it here, you can make it anywhere. That's pretty much in Hendersonville's like that. So I'm very appreciative of that. I don't know where I was going with that, but it'll come back to me. Starting to show my, see, I used to have like brown hair, and now look at it, and I didn't used to have stomach, but now I do. But, okay, so there was a couple more questions that I had that I wanted to say. I like the fact, it doesn't say I'm voting one way or the other, but I do like the fact that we are the only city, I think, I'm almost believe that, I mean, straight up with this, is we're the only ones that have taken our own city and given it to the public and said, okay, public, show us where we need to be, you know, and say, that's what, because that's what democracy is about, you know, and that, at its, maybe not at its strict form, but that's argumentative anyway. But as far as being elected, that democracy that we have here in this town, that's pretty close to letting the public tell us where we need to be. Not every day now, because I try to be with my mother more often and my sister more often, but I still make it a point to, when I get a call from somebody else's ward, I'll go over there and look at the drainage problem. I have several, but we've been doing, to be honest with you, this board has been doing so much good work, the phone calls have gone down except for garbage. And we've all had a problem with that, but a lot of the things that we've got going on now have helped us all, I think. I have some reservations of how the ward is drawn, but or some of the wards. My ward, you know, that's just me being biased about that. I think it should be different, but that's okay. I'm not worried about it. I was an alderman in Ward 3 for several years, and then they were I was not an alderman anymore, and I came back in Ward 1 right after the redistricting the last time. Isn't that right, Arlene? Is that right? The last. Yeah. After that, I ran in Ward 1, and I was very gracious enough to win there. So it really didn't really, redistricting doesn't bother me one way or the other, I got to be honest with you, because I'm here to represent people. And if I can't go to your door and knock on your door and sell myself to you and have you believe that the work that I want to do, you know, just like a politician, that's what they do. You go and you do that. Redistricting should have nothing to do with what that we do as aldermen, and I mean that through the whole, not only this board, but the county commission. I was shocked last night when I found out they want to just throw it up to the board, but I'm not surprised with them. So I have my differences with the county commission. But anyway, I think you've answered my questions, but I wanted to let you know, and I wanted to let the public know how I felt about my experience as an alderman here on this board. I'm grateful for everything. I'm grateful for the committee, because I'm really excited about the fact that you all are the first. That I don't know, Mayor or our city attorney, John Bradley, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know of another city that's done this, whether I like it or not, you know. So, but I'm pleased with the results that you all did and the general committee as well. I thank you, Mayor. I'll just leave it at that, and we'll see what happens, because this has 2 readings, right?
It does.
It does? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Alderman Skidmore, thank you. Alderman Petrelli.
Thank you, Mayor. So throughout my tenure here as an alderman, we've had several citizen-led committees that have made recommendations. We've got Planning Commission, we have the Parks Board, we had Hendersonville Horizon, we had the Recycle Waste Committee, we have an ADA board. And throughout all of those boards and committees, sometimes we've taken their recommendations, sometimes we haven't, sometimes we've taken their recommendations and then reversed it 2 years down the road. Sometimes we've taken a recommendation and tweaked it, and sometimes we've seen the recommendation and rejected it, whether it's a project, whether it's a theory, whether it's a district, whether it's an idea or an ideal. So anytime we have citizens participate in city government, it's appreciated. So in the end, unfortunately or fortunately, the decision happens here. So I don't think there's any way to take politics out of it when you have politics making that end decision. But with that being said, to reiterate, we've been through this process a lot of times on different subject matter, and I don't want to see the process polluted by vitriol. So I do appreciate the time at the 2 meetings that you all spent together presenting this for us. Thank you.
Alderman Petrelli, thank you. We've got nobody else wishing to speak, so we're back on the main motion. That is to approve the map that was presented from the redistricting committee. It's first reading ordinance 2021-48. I think we should vote electronically.
Jamie, can I have some final thoughts and then I'll sit down, or do you need me?
I think we sort of need to move on.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll go ahead. I just want to, I forgot to thank
ahead.
Mr. Bradley, who came to the same meeting twice. He left and got called back, so thank you, sir. Appreciate you. And thank you all again. Like she was saying, I really appreciate and what Mr. Skidmore was saying. You guys do a lot, and we did not negate that at all. We respect you and appreciate you guys for what you do, so thank you very much.
Thank you, William. Appreciate your service, Chairman. All those in favor of the map created by the Independent Citizen Redistricting Committee as part of first reading ordinance 2021-48, please signify by hitting your green button. Those opposed, please hit the red one. So that passes 7-6 with these people voted against it: Alderman Petrelli, Alderman Campbell, Alderman Cunningham, Alderman Brown, Alderman Hayes, Alderman Collins, the ones who voted for it, Alderman Skidmore, Alderman Peterson, Alderman Edwards, myself, Alderman Dixon, Alderman Waters, and Alderman Robertson. Next item we have on the agenda is item number 1. And that is second and final reading of ordinance 2021-39. This is an ordinance concerning retail stores for the sale of alcoholic beverages in the city of Hendersonville, Tennessee. I so move. A second from Alderman Waters. Any discussion on this item? Alderman Peterson.
Yes, Mayor. I would like to have clarification on this. Are we voting to keep liquor stores at 4, or are we adding a liquor store because of the new population census?
So technically, we're not voting to keep liquor stores at 4. We're voting to increase the ratio, and the consequence of that is that liquor stores remain at 4 for the next 10 years. Alderman Peterson, anything else? Go ahead. There we go.
Yes, I think I'm still confused.
Okay. So,
I'm sorry, I don't understand this at all.
so our number of liquor stores are based on a ratio, and right now it's 1 per 12,000, John? One per 12,000 residents here. Because our census took us above 60,000 people, that means that now we could have a 5th liquor store here. So what we're doing is we're adjusting the ratio to 1 liquor store per 16,000. That would continue the restriction of 4 by increasing that ratio. And we're using census numbers. We could change it at some point in the next 10 years, but if we don't change it, the next time that it could sort of organically change would be after the next census.
Okay,
Did I
thank
do- Did I
you.
do better that time?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else, Alderman Peterson? Okay, Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I'd like to make a note that if we increase the population to 16,000 for 4 liquor stores, that would immediately put us in non-compliance to the present 4 that we have now. Because our population now is 61,753. At 16,000, we would have to have 64,000 people to accommodate 4. So we would be immediately in non-compliant with that, number one. Number two, some words come to mind as a Republican conservative, capitalism, free markets, competition, less government regulation. The liquor industry right now is already highly regulated by our state. And according to what was said at the General Committee, the reason why you want to increase it was because that wine is now allowed to be sold in liquor stores as of a law that went into effect on July 1st, 2016. And the liquor stores, excuse me, had a loss in revenue because of that. So I did a little bit of research on my own to see how much loss of revenue that was. And these are estimated numbers now. From 2015 to 2016, it was a minus 2% loss of revenue. 2016 to 2017, it was an 8% decrease in loss of revenue, overall revenue, and I'm talking about liquor sales, beer sales, and wine sales in liquor stores. 2017 over 2018, there was an increase of 4.94% of revenue. 2018 to 2019, 4.93% in revenue increase. 2019 to 2020, hold your hats on this one, it was a plus 22.92% of revenue. And this year it's yet to be determined. So on the 2019-2020 increase of almost 23% increase in revenue to the liquor stores, it looks like that a lot of that, the sales from the restaurants and bars being closed during the pandemic, shifted to liquor stores. So my question here is, are we going to start subsidizing restaurants and bars because they had a decrease in sales or no sales at all because they were forced to close or minimize their capacity to consumers? I don't think so. So for me to support such a ordinance in this city, I just don't see a way around it, because if we're working on conservative values, free markets, capitalism, competition, and an already highly regulated industry by the state, I can't support this ordinance at this time, Mayor. And to be non-compliant immediately upon passing this ordinance on second reading is a big problem for me. Huge problem. Thank you.
Alderman Cunningham, thank you. Alderman Edwards.
All right, thank you. I think I may have a solution to Alderman Cunningham's first issue with it. I make a proposed amendment to the third paragraph at the top of the ordinance, the third whereas, where it says 16,000 in population, I make a motion to amend this to say 15,000 based on the 2020 census. Because if you do 61,000, and I'm just rounding here, 61,000 divided by 15,000, that puts you over, that puts you at 4.07, or if it's 61,700, that gives you to 4.11. So that would make us in compliance. And there's a second, and also in the caption where it's 8, at the bottom, on down where it says 8-107, the end of the first sentence says 16,000 in population. I would propose the same language. Actually, it should say 15,000 citizens based on the 2020 census. So that would be my motion.
We've got a motion. Second from Alderman Robertson. Alderman Edwards, help me out here. Would that allow a fifth liquor store based on the current census?
I think the one you want to ask is walked right over here, Mr. Bradley, but I wouldn't think so. I would think you would have to be over, and that's just my humble opinion.
Okay.
Probably we need an opinion from our city attorney. Mr. Bradley?
He may not have heard the question, although I suspect that he very much knows the answer.
If we have 4.07 or 4.11, that would not allow for a fifth liquor store, would it?
No,
Okay.
it would not.
That's what I thought.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to change the third whereas to 15,000 in population, and also under the enacting clause, which is limitation of number of retail stores, that number changed to 15,000 citizens per the 2020 census. Do I have that right, Alderman Edwards?
That's correct.
Alderman Robertson, you agree with that, since you made the second? Okay, hold on, hold on. Anything else, Alderman Edwards?
That's all.
Okay, Alderman Robertson, go ahead.
Would it be okay, we have someone from the industry here that I could ask some questions to clarify any misinformation that's been given?
I think that's worthwhile. We do have an owner of one of the liquor stores. You do not have any obligation to speak, but if you're going to, you need to come up here.
I've got a question.
Okay.
Come up to the
You got to
mic.
come up here and identify who you are, and pretty soon wish that you had never offered.
And let me,
Without objection, we're going to hear from a liquor store owner. Tell us who you are.
Well, my name is Roy Rice, and I'm with Centerpoint Liquors. My question to you, and maybe I've been wrong, but it's my understanding, you said it's one for every 12,000 people is what it is right now. Okay, when you allowed the fourth store here, is because it went over the 48,000. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, so what you're doing now, if it goes over the 60, why wouldn't that allow the fifth store?
Because it's not,
So what you're proposing is not is going to 15, you're still on the hook for a fifth store. I think that.
Go ahead.
that's incorrect, because we only have 60,000 people. You divide 60,000 by 15, and 15,000, you get 4 stores, which is what we have. It's only when you have the next 15,000, when you get to 75,000 under his ordinance, that you would be able to get a fifth store.
Okay.
It doesn't say or fraction thereof. It says 15,000.
But when you allowed the fourth store here, it was because we went over the 48,000.
Hold on one
And
second.
4 times 12 is 48.
Did
We
we-
had over 4,000.
I see what you're saying.
You get it? 48,000
It's been
is-
our understanding, and I apologize, that once you went over like you said, when you got to 60, what you're proposing, that yes, then you could have another one.
No.
And that's
So
because
we're
of
wrong.
or fraction thereof changed in 2010, am I correct?
No, it changed back in the 90s. It used to say or a fraction thereof,
Okay.
but there was a time, but not for the last 2 censuses. It hasn't been that way.
My mistake. And
It's no
I
problem.
followed the last census, knowing how close it was going to be.
Right, no problem. This puts it off at least for 10 years, it would, the way it is.
Okay. Hold on. Alderman Robertson, do you have questions?
maybe.
You scared of my answer? Because you know I'm going to tell you the truth.
So has your business been affected by the wine sales in grocery stores? And please explain.
Well, and I think there's the misconception. I was listening to your numbers, and when wine went in grocery stores across Middle Tennessee, we lost 35% of our business. Of the wine business, which is the most profitable business we had. It crushed our industry. Closed 25 to 30 stores when that happened. So understand that was huge. Now, we've had to adapt. We've come through it. You talk about the pandemic numbers. You're right. Last year, when we were deemed essential, no offense getting to politics here, but when people gave people free money, let them stay home, there was a lot of day drinking. I'm being honest. I'm sorry.
And Roy, I understand that the wine sales are the higher profit items also.
That is correct.
Wine sales profit is approximately 28% or so, and liquors
It used to be.
or so.
It used to be before wine went in grocery stores. Now, we've had to adjust, and our percentages aren't that high anymore.
And then the liquor sales profit margin is around 22%, is that right?
About 20.
About, yeah.
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
yes,
I was doing I tried to do my due diligence in my
Right.
research.
and
Because
again,
I'm very conflicted over this.
well, I really don't know how to say this, but I'm just going to say it. If you allow a fifth liquor store up here, and I understand, I listened to every word you said, and I lean more towards your views. I'm going to be honest with you. But understand, you're going to open a can of worms up here. All 4 people that own liquor stores here live here.
I know.
The state of Tennessee, the state Supreme Court of Tennessee voted, they knocked out the residency laws. I don't know if y'all realize that. Used to, you had to be a resident of the state to have a liquor license. Total Wine got that knocked out. They ruled it unconstitutional.
It was actually the United States Supreme Court. It wasn't the Tennessee Supreme
but-
Court.
but
It's a nationwide ruling.
But, yes, but they started here, because they broke the residency law here.
But it's illegal in every state now.
Now, that's correct. But anyway, well, you're the lawyer, I'm not. I'm just telling you what's happened.
Roy, hold on here. We got some other questions from Alderman Robertson.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
I think not. I think I'm good.
You're scared. I know he's scared to ask me
I
a question.
think I'm good.
I appreciate it. I just want to tell y'all
You're
there.
not done yet.
Okay. If you allow another store here, I can tell you there's a group that wants to come to Hendersonville. They won't be from Hendersonville. They will do their best. I guess, I don't know if y'all control who, I guess you do control who gets the license, so.
Yes, we do.
But they're going to put on a show that's going to make you hard to tell them no. And they won't do anything for the city, is all that's what's possibly could happen. Again, y'all have the control, I understand that, but it's going to open a big can of worms. And I will sit here and say we've been very fortunate. We're all local. We donate money. I really don't want to knock the wine and grocery stores, but the grocery stores don't help the community. They don't give back to the community like we local people do.
Hold on, Roy, we're going to go to some more questions.
Okay.
Alderman Skidmore, questions for our guest?
I do. I have 2 questions. One is for you, and then one is for Mr. Rice here.
Okay.
It's good to see you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. So, my question is, and I'm just going to tell you straight up, because I believe, in our local stores, the things that all the people, and you're right, all local people support where they stay.
That's what we do in Hendersonville.
That's exactly
You're correct.
right. That's just the way that it is. And I'm proud of them. But my question is, so should we support this, in your opinion, this ordinance?
Sir, again, I'm just trying to tell you the fallout, the last time you added one.
Right.
No disrespect to Don, I think the world of him, the Bonds that got the last liquor store.
Right.
But when he stood up here, he told y'all how much money he was going to add to the coffers. That was the big key. I saw y'all all light up about that. I was here for that day as well. And I tried to explain to people his initial input, the order that he bought, the city gets 5% of. I don't know if y'all know that, but that's what you do. You get 5% of every bottle that comes in my store.
Right.
That initial set added to y'all's coffers. But all you did was slice the pie. I mean, the pie is still the pie. You don't create new drinkers by opening a new store. The city, okay, she's wanting to talk to me now.
Hold on, let's let Roy go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying that, again, the pie is divided by 4, and if you divide it by 5, it's going to hurt the 4 you have
I see what
existing
you're
here.
saying.
And
Okay.
that's it in a nutshell.
You've kind of answered my question.
Okay.
Alderman Skidmore, anything else?
Well, here's my other question. If we're able to do, let's just say this ordinance, under this ordinance that, and it passes, and we have the market at 4, what other businesses are we allowed to do something like this? Is it only the liquor stores, or is it other, I mean, my God, is it mattresses? We got enough mattresses stores in this community, or tire stores. I mean, we've got enough in this town right now to everybody to get a free pair of 4 tires.
Hold on, Roy, I'm gonna have our city attorney
Well,
answer.
I think Ms. Cunningham said it best. We're highly regulated.
Yeah, I know you
Everything I tell people, they talk about, well, you know, can't you write this off? Can't you
Roy,
write that
hold
off?
on, we've got a question we need to answer
Yeah,
from our city attorney. Okay.
But that, I was directing that to our mayor.
Okay.
Because I'm sincere
Well,
about
I
that.
could answer, I can answer that, Mr. Skidmore. State law that says, quote, "You cannot unreasonably restrict the availability of alcoholic beverages, but you can control location and number so long as you don't unreasonably restrict availability." So that is the only control that cities have over liquor stores, really, is the number in the city and the location. For example, Westmoreland has 3.
Oh, my God.
Murfreesboro has 23 and adding 6 more.
Well,
Alderman Skidmore,
nothing's changed out of Blue Raider country, I can tell you that.
Alderman Skidmore, anything else?
No, sir, that's all. Thank you.
Alderman Cunningham, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and I understand what you said in 2010, 2011, the pie got smaller, but the population increased by over 10,000 people from then, so the pie got larger.
It did.
I mean, it
agree.
really did. I mean, you know your numbers. I mean, based on, I mean, these are estimated numbers that I'm putting forth here that I
I know we
got.
got them.
Okay. You know.
I know exactly where you got 'em.
And I know that the wine sales going to grocery stores, I know that affected your bottom line for the first, year or so, until that COVID hit, and wham, you got it all back by then. And I personally know Evelyn, I personally know Linda
know
and
you do.
Jim. I mean, I think the world of those people. I'm not, familiar with the other 2 owners, but, and I know you do much for the community, much, and we appreciate it. But I'm just trying to be fair.
I understand.
I'm
And-
trying to be fair. And I told Evelyn yesterday, Evelyn, you came before us 10 years ago.
It wasn't 10,
Well, it was
5.
9 or whatever, when they applied for the license, for the
Well, I
license
think it was
to.
about 8 years ago.
Hold on, Roy. So I think
And
we're
I
done.
said to Evelyn, Evelyn, you were the new kid on the block. How would you feel if you were coming as a new kid on the block today? And you had to confront that situation. I said, we showed you respect, and you came before us with, I think, 2 or 3 other people that applied for a liquor store. And she understands. I mean,
I understand.
we all understand.
If I could add one comment, and I'll take any more questions. Whatever you vote tonight, y'all are going to vote on. But just understand, within about 5 years, it's going to be at Kroger's, it's going to be in Publix, it's going to be everywhere, and none of us are going to be able to stop it.
Thank you, Roy. Alderman Waters.
Thank you, Roy.
Thank you, Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor.
Are you finished, ma'am?
Good. Alderman Waters, go ahead.
I just got a call from my pastor, so I'm ready to vote.
Okay. So we've got an amendment to change two parts to 15,000. Let me ask the city attorney to clarify. By changing that to 15,000, we will not allow a 5th liquor store until we get above 75,000.
That's correct with that number.
Okay. So we've got an amendment here that's Alderman Campbell.
And a no vote would just leave it at 12,000, correct?
No, we'd leave this ordinance at 16,000, then a no vote on the ordinance, the main motion of the ordinance would leave it at 12,000. So, okay. All those in favor of this amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Now we're on the main motion. All those in favor, this is second reading, I believe. Second reading of ordinance 2021-39 as amended, please signify by hitting your green button. Those opposed, hit the red one. We need one more person. Yep. Okay, there we go. So we've got these people voting no: Alderman Petrelli, Alderman Campbell, Alderman Cunningham, Alderman Brown, Alderman Collins, and Alderman Waters. Does anybody wish to change that? Go ahead. So, Jason, how do we change that? Do we have to vote all over again? What do we do, Jason? Okay, so let's, so all those in favor of second reading ordinance 2021-39 as amended, please signify by pressing the green button. Those opposed, press the red one. So that passes 8-5. The people voting against it are Alderman Petrelli, Alderman Campbell, Alderman Cunningham, Alderman Brown, Alderman Collins. Those voting to keep us at 4 liquor stores: Alderman Robertson, Alderman Waters, Alderman Hayes, Alderman Dixon, myself, Alderman Edwards, Alderman Peterson, Alderman Skidmore. Did I get that correct? I appreciate that. Thank you. Next we are on, let me back up here. We're on first reading of ordinance 2021-43, an ordinance amending budget ordinance 2021-22 that's our budget ordinance, excuse me, to appropriate $925,000 from stormwater to drainage control. That's line item 164-40064-700. I so move. We have a motion from myself and a second from Alderman Robertson. Alderman Campbell.
This just is basically within the guidelines of the stormwater utility, just moving it within the line items inside that particular project, the scope of the project. Like moving it from the one line item to the very next line item. We just need to clean up some stuff. And financially, is that what we're doing here?
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean,
Jess, you're here to give more detail on that. There's some specific projects that.
Yeah, that's what I want to make sure of.
Yeah, so this is with available funds we have in the stormwater fund.
Sure.
We had originally left some projects off in anticipation of getting some ARPA funds in, and since those have been slow coming and the comptroller hasn't opened up the eligibility review period, we still want to move forward with the projects. We have the money for it, and we're just going to put it in and then submit those later for reimbursement through ARPA funds if the board decides to do that.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on first reading ordinance 2021-45? I'm sorry, -43. All those in favor of first reading ordinance 2021-43, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Now we're on first reading ordinance 2021-45. This is an ordinance rezoning .89 acres at 1200 Avondale Road, east of Saundersville Road, and on the south side of Avondale Road in Hendersonville. Alderman Peterson. We have a motion from Alderman Peterson and a second from Alderman Dixon. Alderman Collins.
I have some questions for Mr. Free and probably also for Ms. Locke. I would like for you to clarify for us can you define heavy commercial?
Yeah, heavy commercial it's not quite commercial and it's not quite industrial. It's got some uses that are allowed in commercial, and it's got some uses that are allowed in industrial, so it's kind of an in-between type of zoning.
Do we know what, is there a use already kind of planned for this property?
Yes. Yeah, the use, I believe, and I don't know if the developer or representative is here this evening, but the use that they're looking to do is a facility. It's less than an acre, so it wouldn't be a very
Right.
big building. But it would be something like a contractor's, kind of like contractor office with kind of storage in the back. Could be like a plumbing contractor or electrical contractor or something like that. I think that's their intentions, is to do something like that. It might have four or five of those kind of small offices with, storage.
No retail component,
Yeah,
no.
no, the retail wouldn't be something heavy commercial, yeah.
And do you have any idea of what the traffic impact might look like there, or is
No.
that Sarah's?
Yeah.
I mean,
there-
Ms. Locke's.
Mrs.
Yeah.
Locke may be able to,
Yeah.
be able to address that. And I may just mention this particular piece of property. This is currently in our planning region, and when the county took back the zoning from the planning region a little over a year and a half ago, this was zoned heavy commercial. And actually, it was a little over 2 years ago, it was, we rezoned it from residential to heavy commercial.
Before you trade, the land to it's not the left, before you get to it, when you're driving
Yes,
on Avondale
yes.
and across the street, that's
Yes.
already heavy commercial.
Yes, I believe
And then
that is.
if you
yeah.
go past it, that's where it switches to residential.
Yeah, it's
That's
in the county. That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Alderman Collins, anything? Oh,
Yes, about the traffic.
So I haven't been involved in the conversations that Keith has been involved in. I don't know exactly what's proposed there, but it obviously would depend on the use. But I wouldn't anticipate it being a very heavy traffic contributor to the traffic over there.
And we've had conversations about the traffic on Avondale. There's that hour to hour and a half in the evenings when it's very congested and very difficult. And I
Yes.
personally experience that 2 or 3 times a week. That's what are the plans for improving that?
So this fiscal year, we do have in the budget some funds to add a right turn lane at that
Okay.
location. And so I have set our traffic consultant loose to go ahead and provide us a design set of construction plans for that. Along with that, I requested that they evaluate for safety improvements for that location combined with I believe it's the eastbound State Route 386 exit. There's, the offset between the two of them
I do.
is not adequate, and it caused a lot
That's
of
right.
confusion. So I would like them to evaluate to see if there are any other improvements we could add there to promote safety.
I know personally, when I am leaving Laverne there, I just have to go right. At that time of day, making a left is just really very difficult, and a
It
lot
is
of vehicles
difficult.
are trying to go left. And, okay, when do you think that, I know this is like
Yeah.
the gotcha question that you can't answer, but
Yeah.
just,
I would estimate that we would have some plans in the spring and begin construction before the end of this fiscal year. I would hope that we could do that a little more quickly, but I'm not positive. But the right turn will help with that. To my knowledge, we haven't received any plans for this property yet. It's just the
Okay.
request for rezoning.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
oh, go ahead.
I have had, and I know that Alderman Hayes has as well, because they're copying both of us. We've had some concern expressed because of the traffic situation that we already have there. And, but tonight, I am going to vote in favor of this to move it to a second reading, and kind of digest the information, because it sounds like I would like to learn more about the intended use before I would say for sure how I'm going to feel about this.
Okay.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderman Collins, thank you. Any other discussion?
Mayor?
Oh, go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I may just address, this is, of course, we're annexing the property into the city, but this is straight zoning, so it's not planned development, so the developer may share what they are talking about doing, or we may share with you what they're talking about doing. But once it's rezoned, they're not held to that. They could do any use that's within that. I just wanted to make you aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. All those in favor of first reading of ordinance 2021-45, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Now we have first reading ordinance 2021-46. This is an ordinance rezoning 47.2 acres located west of Freehill Road and on the north side of Forest Retreat Road, and approving the Music CD Studios comprehensive development plan to govern the development of said property. Alderman Peterson. We have a motion from Alderman Peterson, a second from Alderman Cunningham. Any discussion on this? All those in favor of approving first reading ordinance 2021-46, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Thank you all. Next, we have first reading ordinance 2021-47. This is an ordinance rezoning 6.13 acres located to the west of Rockland Road and on the north side of West Main Street, and approving the Near Water Place preliminary development plan to govern the development of this property. Alderman Peterson.
So moved.
We have a motion from Alderman Peterson and a second from Alderman Waters. Any discussion? Hold on here. Alderman Cunningham beat you to it, Alderman Waters. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I suspend the rules and ask Lynn to?
Sure. Sure. Without objection, we're going to hear from the owner of this project. Lynn, tell us who you are.
Tell us
Good
who
evening.
you are,
My
Lynn.
name's Lynn Ely. I live at 250 Lake Valley Road here in Hendersonville.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Alderman Cunningham.
All right. Lynn, I know I spoke to you briefly about this project located in Ward 3 by the Waffle House. It's 49 townhomes, is that right?
Correct.
The streets, it's a gated community?
Correct.
Okay, and the streets are going to be maintained and built and
Yes, they'll be
serviced by
privately owned
the
and
HOA?
maintained. So, yeah, it won't be a taxpayer burden, to put it that way. They'll be privately owned streets and everything else that goes with that. Street lights, landscaping, everything, the curbs, everything will be privately owned.
Okay, and I did not ask you this question, so I don't know the answer to this one. Are they going to be owner occupied?
So we did talk about this just before you walked into the general committee meeting. So what I said in the general committee meeting is that we have two scenarios that we're playing out, and we would like the liberty to have either scenario play out based on the market. But what we are committing to do, that is, if these things are, if it's going to be advantageous to lease these, that we commit that they be leased in their entirety, meaning that this will not be a hodgepodge of selling one unit and then having a neighbor who's renting a unit and they don't get along for that reason. If they're going to be leased, they're going to be long-term lease, no Airbnb, nothing of that nature, and that they're done in a contiguous manner to where the entire development is owned by us and maintained by us and regulated by us with regard to leasing. Conversely, if we decide to sell them, we're committing not to keep some units and lease them. If we decide to sell one unit, we're going to sell them entirely, just like it would be done in any other subdivision I've developed anywhere else in Hendersonville. So we think that we know that that's done a good job of dealing with a lot of the concerns that people have about renting properties, but it also lets us adjust to the market and deal with the market so that when we get there, we won't break ground on this till the spring. We won't be having our first house available till long after that. So there's just a process that lets us figure out what that market's gonna support. So I hope that answers your question. It's a
Well,
little bit
I mean,
different.
it kind of does. I mean, are you saying that all of them are going to be leased units and none of them are going to be owner occupied?
I'm saying that if one of them is going to be leased, that they're all going to be leased in a manner that's managed properly. If one of them is going to be sold, they're all going to be sold to owner occupants.
I would have to have more of a definitive answer than that tonight.
Okay, well,
Because
it's tricky for us to be able to say, just I don't know a good way to put this, but one of the things that we're struggling right now is VA and FHA lending, and we're having a hard time with those lending organizations and us restricting properties to be leased. So this lets us do it in a way that if we are going to lease the property, we voluntarily controlled that management of it to make sure that it's done properly, it's maintained well, it looks good. You don't have the issues where someone's calling the city because they paid $500,000 for a townhouse and the neighbor's leasing theirs and they want the city to come do something about a trash can, that's the issues, frankly, we're all worried about or have problems with when it comes to leasing versus owning houses. But we're finding that there is a real market for leasing high-end housing. There's a real market for having 100% maintained property where someone just frankly doesn't want to mow their yard. We think that the buyer, the homeowner here is going to be either a young professional, is going to be an empty nester, or an age targeted like 55 plus that doesn't want to have home ownership if they're leasing, but certainly doesn't want to have maintenance responsibilities, but still wants to live in a, very nice, well-maintained community and a very nice home. So we think it's advantageous for us to have the option to do either, but want to do it in its entirety. We also think it's advantageous for the city to allow this type of housing, should it be long-term leased, to do it in a way that we're voluntarily regulating ourselves if we do it.
Alderman Cunningham, anything else?
Not at this point. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. I think most people that know me know I oppose residential development. I've always opposed residential. I like commercial, and I go to bat for anything that's commercial that helps the city. But we just passed, they just passed one a couple of meetings ago over here by Hobby Lobby. I don't understand, but that's my problem, not yours. Got a few questions here, and I'm really going to piggyback on Alderman Cunningham's question about this for sale or rental. You haven't made it clear to me, and I know you spoke, but being a country boy, I didn't understand a word you said, so if...
I'll try to do it again, a better job.
That's what's got me concerned. Sale or
Right.
rental?
Right.
I think you said if you sell one, you're going to sell them all.
Correct.
If you rent one, you're going to rent them all.
Correct.
And you used the FHA a while ago about determining which way you're going.
That's not necessarily what's determining the way we're going. We know that that's a real issue.
Yeah.
With putting leasing restrictions on us, whether you do it or we voluntarily do it. We know that that is on the forefront of a lot of discussion when it comes to being able to qualify for a mortgage. I only point that out because it's a daily conversation for us as we're developing new neighborhoods. But what I am saying is that to work around that, so to speak, and make sure that this thing's done properly, should it be leased, is that you have a commitment from us that it's done in a way that it's a managed lease property. Okay. And I want to be clear, because I feel like anytime we talk about leasing a home, that everybody's mind, and frankly, I'm a resident in Hendersonville, and my mind immediately goes to apartments, and I've seen what's recently taken place in Hendersonville, and I may or may not have supported that. I want to be clear that this is very different. What you have proposed in front of you today is not 270 apartments or 300 or 400 or whatever that may be. This is a very small 49-unit high-end townhouse community that's going to look different than most any other you've ever seen in Hendersonville. I've built townhouses in Hendersonville. I've developed communities in Hendersonville. I developed Bridge Mill on Bridge Mill of Indian Lake on Saundersville Road.
I understand.
And that is your traditional townhouse development with front-loaded garages. They're the shotgun-style townhouse, you know, that you're typically used to seeing. These are 2,000-plus square units. These are rear-loaded garages, some of them with two-car garages. The architecture is very different than your traditional shotgun-style townhouse. These are targeted for someone not just to find somewhere to rent. And these are targeted for someone that if we decided to put that program in place for this community, these would be people that don't necessarily want to own a house or can't own a house, but don't want to go to an apartment. They don't want to go to your traditional shotgun townhouse. They want something different, and this fits the bill.
I understand, but let me move on. If I understand it right, and Keith, can correct me, it's right on the ramp as you come off of Main Street, going up past the Waffle House. That's a busy ramp.
It is.
Now tell me what you're going to do about the enter and exit of those apartments onto that busy ramp.
Right.
What are you going to do?
So that's been a challenge for us for 20-plus years at this point. The
I know that,
properties-
sir, but I'm asking you a question. What are you
Right.
going to do about this?
Right. So what I have done, and the only thing that I can do, or the city can do, or anybody else for that matter, with anything done on this property, is look at what improvements can be made with the access that's already granted, because we know that the state will not let us have any other access along the ramp, obviously. So from the Planning Commission, one thing that I gathered, there's two things that I gathered from the Planning Commission. I hope I remember to talk about both of them. The Planning Commission and talking with other people since then. One of those was the traffic movement concerns, particularly exiting the property, because it's not real hard to use. Gallatin Road's a 5-lane road with a center turn lane, and turning right in there's obviously not a problem, and getting in the turn lane to turn in there's not a problem today. Getting out of there is really the concern, and someone made that point at the Planning Commission meeting. Me not really seeing anything that could be done about it, particularly because it's an existing access that's not on my property. This property can only be accessed by easement. At the time, I didn't think I could do anything about it. As it turns out, I called my neighbor, who lives in Florida and has for years and inherited the neighboring property, and asked him if he had any problem with me making improvements to the access that's there today, and he doesn't. So one of the things that I wanted to do, should you choose to vote on this and pass this tonight, was asked to voluntarily amend the amendment to say that we will improve the intersection to add a dedicated left and right turn out of the existing access, and any other access improvements that the Public Works Director finds reasonable to do to that, because I have
Let me
got.
pause. Keith and Sarah, are y'all getting that? Because we're going to ask you to put that in text that we can vote on. Okay, go ahead, Lynn.
So I've gotten commitment from that property owner to be able to do those improvements for a dedicated left and right
Excuse
turn
me,
lane now.
explain to me, you're talking about the other property. What are you referring to? I'm
Where
lost.
you pull in to go to either Waffle House or the gas station. That's the only location that this property.
That's not yours, though, is it?
It's my neighbor's.
Pardon?
It's a neighboring property, but I've spoken with that property owner.
That's not part of the development, is it?
I'm committing to make those improvements as part of this development on the neighboring property. I have permission to do so. So that is the only improvement that really can be done. The property has to be able.
It is the only improvement. You're right.
Yeah. So
And I've lived here all my last 48 years. That is a busy intersection. Main Street is busy, and you come off that Main Street onto that ramp at 90 miles an hour. Talk about you.
There's still a policeman in the room?
Police chief's here watching.
I'll have to get the chief back in. But he's busy texting, so I ain't gonna bother him. But on a serious note, that's dangerous.
Can I address the traffic in the area? Just as it relates to this project, it is something else that I've supplied the Public Works Director with some information just tonight. I took it upon myself to get a third-party traffic engineer to look into just really traffic volumes, because there's not a whole lot. You're talking about a 5-lane highway as our frontage, so there's not a whole lot I can do to the highway, but I asked her to just ask the traffic engineer to look into volume of traffic. And something that was eye-opening to me is they always work on peak hours, and the AM peak hour exiting this proposed small 49 unit development is 13 vehicles.
Then I think
I'm sorry.
this is probably what we should do right now.
Okay,
Is
well,
let's
my
take a
point is to
break.
say it's
Okay.
very low volume exiting the property.
So let's take a break. Let's have you get with Sarah and Keith to give us some wording that we'll consider up here. But I
Okay.
don't want to try to continue doing that without it actually in writing, because it's getting a little bit confusing to us.
I understand.
So do you feel like you can accomplish that in 10 minutes?
Yeah, I think I've done it, but yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Looks like y'all are going to give it a try.
Yeah.
So I'll entertain a motion to take a 10-minute break.
Mr. Mayor, I had the floor.
You did,
I
and I'm
wasn't through.
hoping that you'll be okay with it.
Did you think I was through?
We will come back to you, I promise.
Getting out here 90 miles an hour.
Yeah.
90 miles an hour.
Alderman Waters, are you okay taking a 10-minute break?
I moved to take a 10-minute break.
Okay, we have a
Don't
motion.
go off.
Alderman Hayes makes a second. All those in favor of taking a 10-minute break, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. We're going to take a 10-minute break. That passes unanimously. Go back to Alderman Waters. Hold on, Jason, are we good? Okay. We just came back from a 20-minute, 10-minute break. Alderman Waters, back to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I see here on the blueprint, your start date for this construction is May 2022, and you're going to finish in 2023.
Correct. We'll get it done quicker if we can.
Okay. Well, let me apologize to you and to the board because I was confused about the ramp a while ago when I was talking about that, the traffic. But somebody educated me and showed me. I didn't even look up here to see, but I really like what you're saying about the enter and exit of the property. It makes a whole lot of difference to me. So you've changed my mind, or they changed my mind, so thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Waters, thank you. I think Alderman Skidmore was next before we left for the break. Alderman Skidmore.
Thank you very much. I just have did you all get about the sale versus rental done, fixed tonight?
I believe so. I've tried to be as clear as I can about it.
Okay.
About the commitments that I plan to make, and I think we also, in the break, cleared up with staff about what improvements we can make and what we're committed to do there also.
Okay. The other issue was that my esteemed colleague from Ward 6 was talking about the access of this issue of where the property is. The concerns that I have, because we have, and Peg, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've got 3 gas stations down there and a Waffle House. We've got 2 apartment complexes, and then we've got a, yes, thank you, storage facility. And so you have, is that the only access that you're going to have? Is that, and it's going to be a right out, and there's not going to be a, so if people want to go left out of this, what are they going to do? Go around to the back of the Exxon?
It's a full access.
Okay.
It's a full access. In fact, what we were discussing with staff, and they made a point to remind me that this is just as entitlement as zoning to the property. We will be sure this is cleared up by site plan approval, obviously, but
okay.
It's a full access now. We're just going to improve it to add 3 lanes instead of the 2 that it currently has.
Okay, so the gate, and these are things that I could have talked to you today, and I apologize for not getting back
No problem.
with you.
I'm happy to talk about it here.
Sir?
I'm happy to talk about it here.
Okay, well, that's cool. Just either way, but I want to tell you that I'm sorry for that. The other is where the gate is going to come in. Where is that exactly? Is that where the fence is?
So if you look at your plan on C 2.0, it's reflected in here as a note, but to see it on the screen, it might be easier.
Okay.
Yeah, the cursor's about where it will go.
Oh, okay, now I see it. Yep.
So when you actually enter the property, so you'll come, when you come home, for instance, you'll hit a garage door opener that will open the community's gate, then you'll hit another garage door opener when you pull into your garage. It's as simple as that.
All right, and then let me ask you one more. I've had it written down. How about a buffer zone? Is that going to be around the ramp area that,
Yes, sir.
like where we, because Alderman Waters is correct, and I know you know this, and I know all the aldermen up here know this. There's hundreds, thousands of cars that go through right there, and I would imagine that the complex that you're wanting to build, the buffer zone will stop some of that noise, because there's going to be some noise.
That's the idea. The plan does have a dedicated landscape plan in it. It's L 3.0, but we've got buffers essentially surrounding all sides of the property.
Okay.
Some of it is for noise, some of it is for beautification, and some of it is just frankly to screen between us and our existing neighbors. But with that, the beautification side of it that I may not have touched on yet, the landscape plan also calls for some uniqueness you'll see here, that we're going to have essentially paver streets or cobblestone streets with this development, and decorative type lighting, those type of things. That we want this thing to look like it's been there, this development, even though it's small, we want it to feel like it's been there 100 years. So we're trying to do all we can from site amenity to give some of that feeling when you enter your little community.
Okay, and I was noticing, my final question to you is, on the proposed amenities, I see you've got a nice little area for grilling park, you've got a dog park as well, and, but I don't see a cat park. So what are you going to do about that?
We'll let you bring your cat over there too if you can keep it in the fence.
I'm just messing with you this evening. This has been a hard meeting for all of us, so thought I'd throw a little joy into the thing. I'm just teasing about that. Cats are too cool for dog parks, so, but dogs are wonderful. I have a small little poodle myself.
We find that in our communities, people really value them, so we've actually planned a little bit of a nicer one than we normally do in this one. It's got some play areas within the dog park.
Good, because
that's reflected in the plan if anybody's interested, and there's some images that show those type of amenities in here.
What's the old saying? Dogs are people too, right?
Right.
All right. Well, listen, thank you this evening. I appreciate, as long as we got that one thing settled for you guys, that the mayor, and I think Jim had talked about is the sale and the rental. That's all I need to know for, this goes on second, we have a second reading on this?
We do.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Mayor, will that be in the next meeting for all the aldermen to look at?
It will, and we'll have a public hearing also. I assume that's right, Keith?
Okay,
Public hearing.
thank you. Thank you.
Alderman Skidmore, thank you. Alderman Edwards. All right, thank you. Mr. Healy or Mr. Free can answer this. What is the current, or are the currently approved uses for this property? Yeah.
The primary use that's approved for the current plan development is a new automotive dealership and offices. And so those are the only two uses that are, as you know, general commercial allows a lot more uses, but those are the only two uses that have been specified for the old plan development that's on the property right now.
Okay, thank you, Keith. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. And Mr. Healy, I know you and I had spoke on the phone today. You haven't touched on this yet. And as you know, this city does not have any impact fees. And you had mentioned today some voluntary amount of contribution you were willing to make to help with the offset the impact this may have on the city, specifically to this vicinity, to the west side.
Yeah.
What is the amount of the voluntary amount that you're willing to offer?
We did talk about this, and when I said to address Alderman Waters' questions, I said I had two things that I wanted to add, if I could, if anyone would so entertain a motion to pass the project, there would be two things that I would add as conditions to that. And one was that I work with staff on the accesses, which I think we've cleared up. The other is that, I sat through general committee today, and it was eye-opening just how much business gets done here. I'm a born and raised resident of Hendersonville, and in the general committee meeting, I heard a lot of talk about beautiful Hendersonville, which was a committee that I remember as a kid. I remember seeing things like the banners down the street and the hanging pots at the bridge, and we would get things in the mail that would tell us what house won the Christmas decoration, so we would ride and look at those type of things. I find that stuff great. I think it brings a huge sense of community to Hendersonville, and I miss some of that. I also hear about programs like the West Corridor Improvement Program that is exactly where this project is and would be impacted by that, and we want to be a good resident of the corridor and of the city, so we want to voluntarily make a commitment for every door that we build, being only 49 in this little community, that a $2,500 contribution be made to the city towards those type of programs.
Okay, I appreciate that. And you said there's 49 units?
Correct.
So that would be $122,500?
Correct.
Okay. And we certainly appreciate that. And this may be directed towards Keith. So we have the West Side Revitalization Plan. Is that, when do you anticipate that coming out?
The consultants are working on that currently, and we anticipate probably maybe May or June, we'll have that final plan done.
Okay, and what is the best way you suggest that we allocate the $2,500 voluntary contributions per unit that can only be used towards the recommendations in the West Side Revitalization Plan, like whatever it recommends, any kind of improvements or new construction? If we can, I don't know if we need to put it in this plan or ordinance that we can allocate those funds specifically for what is recommended.
Yeah, if you did that, what we anticipate is that the plan will have action items, and we plan on aggressively taking on those action items, and some of those may be changing zoning things and within that area, but there also probably will be a list of some improvements that have been identified to be made. So it could go toward that. It could go toward any improvements identified in that master plan of it's actually West Main Street and Old Town.
Okay.
Is the area that's being defined.
And do you think you can include that as part of this plan before it comes to us, if it makes it to second reading? So it specifies?
Yeah, it would just be something, if BOMA wanted to do that, you could specify that in any manner.
So we run into a little bit of problem, is that we can't appropriate money with this. We can certainly include it in there, but we'll still have to appropriate money at some time in the future.
Okay. And I guess that would require an amendment to this, right? Or do you think we can just?
I mean, I think we should include, if he's willing to, I think we should include it, as well as we should include his suggestions on his improvements to the entrance.
Okay.
Yeah, you can improve both of those things within the motion, or add them to the motion, and then that would capture them within, if it was approved.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to include, to amend the, to include as part of the master plan that they make the suggested changes to the ingress and egress to the property, as you've articulated, as well as the contributions that you've stated that you're willing to make. So
Keith,
that would be my motion.
Appreciate that.
I'll
Keith,
second that motion.
we have a motion, a second. Keith, where does this go? Is it a note? Is it part of the text on the ordinance?
It would just be a note that would be added to the plan, is what it could be. So I don't think it didn't necessarily have to be included within the ordinance. It's going to be in the minutes of this meeting, and then it's a part of the plan development. So any notes that are on a plan development, then that's what the developer is agreeing to.
So help me out, Alderman Edwards. So your motion is two-part, and that is to accept, how much money did you say? $2,500 per door, per front door unit, for off-site improvements. Did you say that?
Yes.
As well as to obligate him to his suggestion that he make, we'll say, improvements to the entrance.
Yes.
Okay. Is that wording good enough, Keith?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay. How do we determine what his improvements to the entrance are going to be? Is that something?
That actually would be worked out later during the site plan.
Okay.
But generally, I guess just to state it,
Okay.
that the developer has agreed to work with staff
Okay.
to improve, to enhance the current access on the Main Street by providing dedicated left and right turn lanes.
Okay.
And then we would just work with them to suit that as best could be.
So let's do this. Let's make section 2, section 3. I'm on page 62. We're going to make that section 3. And section 2 is going to be the proposed amendment, if it passes. And that is, tell me how much money again, I'm sorry.
$2,500 per unit.
Per unit.
Yeah.
For nearby off-site improvements, and then improvements to the access.
Yes.
That will be included in the final development. Do we have
Added to the final development plan.
Okay. So we have a motion, a second motion from Alderman Edwards, and a second from Alderman Cunningham. We have several people who want to speak. I feel like we should go ahead and dispense with this, unless anybody else wants to discuss this. Okay. Okay. All those in favor, I'm sorry, Alderman Peterson?
Yeah, Mayor,
ahead.
thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering with with the notes and with the new plans for the entrance, should this go back to planning? I don't know the steps that should take, because there's a lot being discussed, and I just wanted to make that suggestion.
Keith, how do you feel about that? Are we within a precedent that we've handled similar in other situations?
Yeah, I think sending it back to planning, the only things that have really changed, I've been adding the 2,500 per unit for offsite improvements, and then also just acknowledging the improvement to that access, which actually would be dealt with later at the site plan. So really there'd be no significant value in taking it back to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
There's nothing, unless there's something else. But those two items wouldn't be enough.
Alderman Peterson, you're within the rights to make a motion on that, or do you want it to go forward?
No, I was wondering if we could put the map back
Okay.
up.
Should we go ahead and vote on this proposed amendment, or do you want to ask more questions about
I
this?
just wanted to ask one
That's
quick
fine.
question.
Okay.
I don't have a mic.
Oh, you are right about that.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just had one quick question with this map. And Mr. Healy, is it possible to have the entrance to your development go behind Exxon and connect to that road where people can access at the light? Because I'm just very concerned about traffic and accidents right there where the proposed entrance is.
Yeah, happy to answer that. Great question. I wished it was, but no, the answer's, not to be frank, but the answer's no. We have tried for many years to negotiate with that property owner. That is an independent property owner. So we came to the resolution years ago that the state's not going to give us any access anywhere else, and we're only limited to the access that we have today. So that, as an engineer, that was my natural go-to solution, but it's just not in the cards for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Peterson. Are we ready to vote on this amendment? Anybody else want to speak? Go ahead, Alderman Dixon.
The $2,500 per unit, would that be even if you chose your lease scenario, or would that just be if you are selling for sale personal use?
It's a per door number, so it's the same either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea when you're going to make a decision on which scenario you're going with?
So, to be honest, the way that the market is right now, and you know this, I'm sure everybody does, because they see what's happening in Hendersonville, that we are likely, as Alderman Waters said, starting these sometime in May. It might be towards the end of next year before they're first built. It will likely be then when we have them built, because the market could be drastically different.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman
Thank you,
Dixon,
Mayor.
thank you. Alderman Cunningham, do you want to speak on the amendment? Well, you seconded the amendment, I think. Do you want to speak on the amendment, or should we vote on it?
No, vote on that.
Okay, okay. So the amendment is that we're going to move Section 2 down, make that Section 3, and Section 2 will now include will include improvements to enhance the entrance, and $2,500 per unit to be used for nearby off-site improvements. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to review. This is a gated community,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Okay. You will be totally 100% responsible for roads within that community, sidewalks, any kind of drainage issues that come about, you're going to take care of.
Correct.
Also, you would be responsible for your own trash collection.
Correct.
Okay, now my next question is that it's a multifamily residential planned development, MFRPD. Does that come under, and this might be a question for Keith, does that come under the 40% appraisal rule for tax purposes? Property tax?
Yeah, that would be up to the county assessor to determine whether that was the case. Definitely not if it was homeowner. The rental, I don't know if that would make a difference. I will just note, since I'm right here, certainly the whole rental versus owner, it's certainly okay to kind of discuss that and, kind of ask some different questions about that. But definitely in your decision, it would not be proper to utilize that in your decision-making.
Yeah,
it's
I
okay to have
understand
that
that.
conversation. I just
Because
want to say that.
it's illegal to do
Yes.
that. Yeah, I understand that. I was just asking the question
Yes.
about the revenue for the property taxes.
So that would be determined.
So would that be determined at the point when Lynn decides whether or not to lease everything or sell everything?
Yeah, probably. If it was all under one ownership, then my guess is at that time, then the tax assessor would evaluate how that property is taxed.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's the end of my questions. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Cunningham. Alderman Edwards.
Briefly, I don't have anything profound to say. I appreciate your candor regarding the leasing. That did give me pause, but the fact that what you're willing to offer and the west side, everybody knows, desperately needs some revitalization, and what you're willing to offer would get it moving in the right direction. So to put it in football terms, you put me in the red zone. I'm going to vote for this on first reading. I don't know what I do on second reading, but I like what you have to offer, and I appreciate your candor.
Sure.
So thank you.
Alderman Edwards, thank you. Alderman Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Ely. I have a few questions about the project. I've read what the staff has submitted to us and what you submitted to the city. I know what the answer to these questions are, but I think it's good to be on the record, put them on the record.
Okay.
We have a requirement, a bricking requirement, and in this situation, it's my understanding that the minimum brick percentage is 66%. What percentage of brick do you intend these developments to be?
So it's detailed pretty well. That did come up at a staff level before the plans ever reached you and before they reached Planning Commission. They're page by page depending upon the facade, but they average about 73%.
So you're exceeding, you are exceeding the city, the requirements.
Correct. And I'll, if I may, I'll point out that anywhere there is not brick, that we are voluntarily requiring ourselves to do other masonry products. So in other words, if there is facade or whatever, that we like the architectural detail that the architects put in there to have some variation, but there's not going to be any vinyl, I guess is the best way for me to put it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've stated that they're going to be 73% brick and we require 66%. So
Correct.
I like that. You're not requesting a waiver on the bricks. Now, let me ask you another question.
Yes, sir.
Do you have enough parking spaces at this development?
Yes, we do. I'll get the numbers for you, but we far exceed the requirement. The parking provided with driveways and garages, 142 spaces. Keith, I think the staff report says the requirement, but it's far less than that. I think almost half that.
Yeah. So you are exceeding the on-site parking requirements?
Correct.
Okay. So what about the height of the buildings? Are you requesting a waiver on the height of the buildings?
No, sir.
Are you requesting waivers on any of the building requirements that the city has?
No, sir.
You're in full compliance.
Yes, sir.
Let's go back to the map that shows the rendering of the apartment. Or of the unit. No, not that. It's on page 70. You don't have that. Okay, well, I'll just ask you. So the largest building
I
is.
can hold it up if you'd like.
Yeah. How many units are in the largest under one roof?
I believe we have a couple of buildings at 6.
The one I'm looking at looks like it's got 4.
Yeah, we've got a couple. We were deliberate in that we wanted to have variation so that you didn't get this monotonous look of a row housing.
Yes.
Because these things are kind of designed to where they have they look like a big house, and we didn't want every big house to look like the same big house. So when you look at the site plan, they go from like 6 to 4 to 3 to 3 to 4. Majority of them are 3 and 4s, some are 6. I got a 5-unit one in here, but it's intended to be varied across those numbers, but none greater than 6.
Yeah, and I've recently talked to the assessor of property in the city, and the requirements that they use, anything 2 or greater under one roof will be designated, if it's for rent, is designated as commercial. So this would be designated as commercial and charge the higher tax rate. So,
Okay.
so for
That's
sure,
news to
if
me,
it's,
so I-
for sure, if it's a 4-plex and it's renting, we wouldn't provide garbage. You understand that?
I understand that.
That's a policy, that's in the contract that we have, and that's a policy of this city.
I understand that. In
Okay.
fact, we knew when we were doing a gated entrance that all city services we'd have to provide all of our own services and in fact have to sprinkle all the buildings because of that same reason.
Yeah,
So,
and do you have a targeted, if you lease them, what's the minimum lease that you will, I've heard 18 months, I've heard 12 months. The
Yes.
longer I think would be the better.
The longer the better, indeed. That touches on that same FHA VA requirement in that we cannot, I wished I was better educated on this, but even for sale, if you were to put a house for sale, that they have implemented new rules and regulations that say that if your property is restricted from leasing greater than a 6-month lease, that you are in violation of FHA VA mortgage requirements.
Okay.
So legally speaking, we can't restrict them more than 6 months.
Well, we don't want any violations
Right.
of federal regulations or laws.
Our intent is for much, much longer.
Yeah, and so what is the targeted, if you do lease them, what would you expect to have to lease them for a month?
So as I was saying, these things we'll have still nearly another year pass, if not more, before I will be leasing them. But our projections as of today are teetering around $3,000, north of $3,000, $3,100 to $3,500 would be a projected monthly rent for these. If we just choose to go to the for sale scenario, these things are going to be north of 400,000, but we're thinking mid 400s. So both very unique situations in the city of Hendersonville. We don't have that. So we think that we're being creative and opportunistic by trying to do something that is unique to the city, but at the same time, we're venturing into uncharted waters in both scenarios.
So Keith, what ward is this development in? 3. Is it in 3? And I always like to hear, I think I've heard some, but I always want to give great deference to the alderman in the ward where the development is being proposed. And I'm not asking you to tell how you're going to vote, but I do give great deference to the alderman.
One of them's in the red zone right now.
Well, that's right. That's right.
First down.
In the green zone.
So,
First and 10 in the red.
that tells me what I need to know. So what I intend to do, because this meets all of our standards, this, I think, is a unique property. It's on a small footprint. And I would rather have this luxury complex than a car lot. I'll just be honest with you. Even though it's not in my ward, I think the entrance of the city, this would be better. So on the first reading, I'm going to vote yes. I don't know how I'll vote on the second, because I want to get with staff and better understand how you're going to improve the egress, ingress to this property. So I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and vote yes on this one, and I'll hold judgment on the second one. So thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Robertson, thank you. Alderman Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Keith, this question's for you. You were talking about the legal reasons for rental or purchase, not talking about that. Is it for HUD and federal issues moving forward for our city that we don't want to put ourselves in a position to where we lose federal funding and things of this nature?
No, it's not that. It's just
Okay.
a basic.
That's why don't you clarify
Yeah,
that.
and the city attorney may be able to clarify it as well, but it's just a basic fair housing issue that's just at the base of rights. And so it's something every community is dealing with, especially with all of these billions of dollars pouring into large investment rental developments of single-family homes or buying up, just like in all of our neighborhoods, buying up areas. It's just the right of what the type of home ownership is, whether it's home ownership or rental. That's really not something that would be in our purview to say
restrict.
you can't or you would. Because if you could do it, we would have it in our zoning ordinance, saying, this is that, but you can't do it. And maybe Mr. Bradley can.
I would just say under the Fair Housing Act, we can't discriminate against people based on whether they rent or own their property. And, it's just a very basic thing. The city regulates land use, not ownership. If we start telling who can own property, just imagine the mischief we'd get into.
Sure, and I just want a clarification.
But that's the
because So many
clarification.
people ask questions, they don't know the reason why we make certain votes or do things, and I was just trying to get
It's
the
understandable.
experts here on our board to
Well,
give
we
a little bit
once
more
had an
input.
issue similar to this, well, not exactly this, but we had the Justice Department came out and interviewed a lot of aldermen and staff about an issue very similar to this.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you.
It's certainly understandable, and it's a question we get quite a bit in the planning department, because the basic citizen would think, hey, I just got an email a couple weeks ago about the same subject, we should be able to keep things from being rental. And that's just not the case, but most people would think that would be something that you could do. And really, the thing about it is until recently, it really hadn't been an issue where it's been, hey, wait a minute, is that subdivision going to be rental or is that going to be homeowner occupied? This is a whole new kind of new thing that we're entering. So before, you approve a subdivision development of single-family homes,
There it is.
there wouldn't be any question about whether they're rental or home buyer. Would just be assumed that's the case. But that's changed, and that's kind of what's brought up this whole thing about what the rights are.
Well, that's why I wanted you to clarify that
Yeah.
because of the persona out there in the public as to what we can and cannot do. And I want to clarify that better with staff.
Yes.
And let you clarify that for us. Thank you. I
Appreciate it,
appreciate
Keith.
your time. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Alderman Campbell. Alderman Collins, you're the last person.
I'm going to
that-
be fast, too.
Okay, so let me just caution everybody, we are on page 1. We've got to get through page 2, including executive session.
Super
in an hour and a
fast.
half. So faster than what I just said?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Faster than an hour and a half.
Go ahead.
So I don't know if we have any ordinances that regulate the sound pollution, I guess would be the term, that is going to come off of that ramp from the bypass. It just so happens that I have a job site this week right on 109, and it's really annoying to me. It seems like it should be in violation of something at the job site where I have been this week. So I'm almost thinking, like, do you need a wall, a soundproofing wall of that, whatever that material, composite material is, beyond vegetation? Do we have rules about that? And the reason it's a concern for me is because I don't want to build a product, I don't want you to build a product that ends up getting run down
Sure.
over time. And I want it to be something that's so nice that people invest to maintain it well.
Right. So what we found, because it's not uncommon for us to build a subdivision, in my day job is to develop property. It just so happens this one we owned prior and plan to. It's different, I'll say that, than what I normally do. But it's not uncommon for us to develop right up against 65 or against 24. And we do find that vegetation works the best. It seems to dissipate the sound the best. Walls and those type of things are more act as an echo chamber, and seem to make things louder. So the more trees and shrubs I can plant, the better. And they have a tendency to improve over time. They get bigger. And had this been say, right up against 70-mile-an-hour speeds, it might be different, but being that it's the ramp,
Well, Mr.
short
Waters
of Alderman
goes
Waters
90 on
driving
that.
90, I'm hoping that, I'm hoping the traffic's not quite as bad as, say, 70-mile-an-hour
Yeah.
normal speed.
Okay. Thank you.
But it is something we've had to consider. It's a good point.
Okay. Alderman Collins, thank you. Keep in mind that we have passed an amendment to this. We have nobody else in the queue wishing to speak. All those in favor of first reading of ordinance 2021-47, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. Let's go to electronic if we could. Jason, are you ready for that? Okay, so all those in favor of ordinance 2021-47 on first reading, please hit the green button. Those opposed, hit the red one. Alderman Waters, we need you. There we go, there we go. Okay, so that passes 7-6. Voting for it, Alderman Robertson, Alderman Waters, Alderman Collins, Alderman Brown, Alderman Cunningham, Alderman Edwards, Alderman Campbell. Voting against, Alderman Petrelli, Alderman Skidmore, Alderman Peterson, myself, Alderman Dixon, and Alderman Hayes, 7-6. Appreciate it. We have second reading most likely in December. Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate your time. Next, we have first reading ordinance 2021-49. This is an ordinance to establish a fund to track all revenues and expenditures of the coronavirus fiscal recovery funds established under the American Rescue Plan Act. I so move. I have a motion for myself and a second from Alderman Petrelli. Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind everyone this has to come before finance at our next finance meeting. Not it has to, but it should. It absolutely should. In fact, it should have come before finance first, before the first reading. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other discussion? Thank you, Alderman Cunningham. All those in favor of first reading ordinance 2021-49, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Now we have first reading ordinance 2021-50. This is an ordinance appropriating coronavirus fiscal recovery funds to pay premium pay to public safety employees. Alderman Robertson. We have a motion and a second from Alderman Peterson. Alderman Robertson.
We've had a lot of discussion on this. All of us agree that our first responders have carried a heavy load during the pandemic. All of us support our first responders, and this is a way to put the money where our mouth is. And so I hope that everyone will support our first responders by voting for this tonight, and then we'll have a second reading in 2 weeks, so, or at the next meeting. So that's all I have to say, Mayor.
Alderman Robertson, thank you. Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. And this might be for our city attorney, a question. My understanding is that based on our municipal code, Chapter 6, 1 to 606, the Finance Committee, consideration of issues relating to budgetary process, capital projects, tax rate, financial planning, debt service, alternative sources of revenue, and other issues affecting the fiscal affairs of the city needs to come before the Finance Committee. So I, again, suggesting that this come before Finance, before the first reading, and defer this until after that.
So we have a motion to
So,
defer?
No, I want
Okay.
to, I asked the city attorney about his,
I haven't,
his
I don't have that in
interpretation.
front of me, what you just read, but I think you just said what the Finance Committee is supposed to do.
Yes.
Well, then this is something that should go to the Finance Committee, but I'm not, this board voted tonight to add it to the agenda, even though it hadn't been to the Finance Committee. So I think the only remedy you would have for it not having to go on to the Finance Committee is to defer it to the Finance Committee meets. I mean, that's really the only way to deal with that.
Well, I think that's the proper way, and if we have to call a special called BOMA meeting, I mean, I know some people are going to be a little, annoyed at that or inconvenienced at that, but if they think that this is as important as it should be, then a special call BOMA meeting should be done after the Finance Committee meeting in 2 weeks. Or another option is I can call for a special call Finance Committee meeting for next week, and it could be done quicker than that. So my motion is to defer it until the first reading on a Finance Committee.
So can you get, it might be easier if you actually gave us a date when we should bring it back here, but it's.
Well, I mean,
You could leave it until the finance.
Wait a minute, let me look at the dates here. I mean, I could call a finance committee meeting a week from today, a special called one, if my members will be able to attend on the 16th, and I could ask them right here and now. I could poll them now. Karen? I'll make it very short. Rachel? Yes, it's a week from today.
What time? 5 or?
Anytime.
Yes, as long as it's at or after 5 p.m.
Okay. 5, okay. All right.
What day
then
is that? What day is that?
Tuesday the 16th.
It's the 16th.
I cannot make it. I'm having surgery that day.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Well, I mean,
can't
it's
make
going to pass the finance. I mean, there's no doubt that it will.
Hold on one second. Alderman Cunningham, do you have a motion?
The motion is to defer this until the next special call finance meeting, which I'm calling on November 16th.
Okay.
And
Do we have a-
that's my motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
A second from Alderman Dixon. So, a discussion on deferring this until after the special finance committee. That's where we are, discussion on deferring it. Alderman Collins, on that item?
Yes. The previous ordinance on the agenda where it's coming to finance in between the first and second readings. I don't, isn't it? Is that how we've done the previous ordinance? So,
What you
could we
just
not-
did, you voted on first reading on something that hasn't been to the finance
and we're
committee.
bringing it to finance, to our next, so can we do that?
Well, the first one, the first ordinance that we just voted on was not appropriating funds. It was just setting up a special fund for the COVID relief
That's a
fund.
significant distinction.
That's just establishing an
Yes.
internal fund for it.
Yes,
We
and
weren't
that,
appropriating
okay.
$300,000.
And that is a significant distinction, and
To me,
I will
yeah.
support this amendment.
Thank you.
Having that.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak on the motion to defer? Alderman Robertson.
Yeah, this is my ordinance, and I want to be there when the finance committee, if this board decides to take it up, I'd like to be there to defend the integrity or the direction of this ordinance. So you've set a meeting up where I'm going to be just out of surgery, so I object to this. If you're going to set up a time to do this, I mean, do you understand? I want to be there when y'all start dissecting my ordinance.
Okay, Alderman Roberson, would the day be prior to that be agreeable to you on the 15th? It's a Monday.
Yeah. So if we have this finance committee and it's approved at the finance committee, then it has to wait 2 weeks to go to a BOMA meeting?
Well, a special call BOMA meeting would have to be called.
And we're going to call a special BOMA meeting on the week of Thanksgiving? I mean, the 30th? So the first reading is at the 30th, and the second reading would be the first meeting in December. I don't think the staff has time to cut the checks for the police officers and firemen before the end of the year.
Well, it would be the same thing. It would be the same timeline, because if we voted on it tonight, the first meeting for BOMA would
Hold
be
on.
the first, would be the second Tuesday in December
No,
anyway.
it'd be the 30th.
Robertson, go ahead.
It'd be the 30th of November. We're going to have a meeting on the 30th of November, aren't we?
Nope,
We don't have
We
one scheduled.
canceled that.
We don't have it scheduled. No, we canceled the 23rd.
we canceled it.
Hold on. Alderman Robertson, go ahead. This is the only meeting we have scheduled in November. We have one meeting scheduled in December.
So why don't we pass this tonight? We'll still have the second reading, and I will agree on Monday to come to the Finance Committee. But let's pass it on the first reading. And we've done this before, and then have the Finance meeting, and then have the second reading so that we're ready, we don't have to call a special BOMA meeting. A lot of people are going to be traveling during the week of Thanksgiving and near the end of the month. So I would ask as a compromise to go ahead, let's pass it on the first reading. Let's have a finance committee meeting on that Monday and then the second reading. So that will give the finance committee an opportunity to question me and to ask questions and satisfy that need.
Well, the way to express that would be to vote no on the motion to defer this.
And if you vote no, I'm going to turn around and make a motion of what I just said.
Okay. Appreciate Alderman Robertson. Alderman Campbell.
I just wanted to make an amendment to this, that we add all.
We can't make an amendment right now. We're discussing a motion to
Okay.
defer. So
I'd like to come back and have an amendment to this before we move on.
If this
Thank you.
survives, I'll come back to you. Alderman Edwards on the motion to defer.
Yes, sir. This may be relevant. Does this have to be an ordinance? I mean, can we do this as a resolution so we're just one and done?
You're appropriating money, it needs to be by ordinance.
All right.
I mean, there's a
That's
way
okay.
we can do it with a resolution, transferring money and then reimbursing the city, but that gets pretty dicey. We don't really want to go down that path.
I just thought I'd ask. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Alderman Edwards. Any other discussion on the motion to defer this until after the finance committee meets? We're going to go electronic. So voting aye is a motion to defer this until after the finance committee meets. Voting no means that we will continue to discuss this.
When day is this meeting on?
No. Again, a no is to not defer it,
Right,
correct?
right. We will take it up if it fails. We need Alderman Campbell, Alderman Brown. Don't put it that way. There we go. Okay, so we got everybody? Okay. So this fails. 3 people voted for it. That's Alderman Cunningham, Alderman Brown, Alderman Collins. We have an abstention from Alderman Petrelli. Alderman Skidmore, Peterson, Campbell, Edwards, myself, Dixon, Hayes, Waters, and Robertson voted against the motion to defer. Alderman Campbell, let's go to you, and then we'll go to Alderman Edwards.
I'd like to add an amendment to it that we cover all of our employees in this bonus. I realize EMS and police and fire are the ones we always look for that, but our public service employees and our parks employees also have been out there interacting with the public and doing their jobs, filling potholes and trying to maintain our city. And when I think about it, like I said, I work at a hospital, and they just wrote a check to all their employees. If you've been there over 1,000 hours in this year, you got the maximum bonus, and if you've been there less than 1,000 hours, you got half that bonus. And it was 3,500 employees. So I would like to see what it's not that much more. It's probably another $240,000 to cover everybody. We've got 500 employees. How many full-time employees do we have here in the city of Hendersonville? I wish we had someone. Jesse, do you have that number handy?
360. How many full
what's that, sir? 360 plus. So you're talking what, another 60 employees to add to this number? So $300,000?
So we have a motion, but help me out, Alderman Campbell. What are we changing here?
Where we talk about essential public safety employees means public safety employees who have worked at least 100 hours. I would just, all essential employees, public safety and support staff such as Parks Department and public works employees. And you could cover Codes Department because they've been going to the code. They've been going out there looking at buildings as they've been built. And you could also throw in, I'm like I said, essential, just all the employees.
I think that works. So
just all employees. Give them a bonus.
Hold on, John's going to help us out here.
Trying to cut out a certain group of people, that's great, but
Hold
I
on,
think
Alderman
we've got everybody
Campbell.
that needs
Hold
that.
on, our city attorney is going to make a suggestion here.
Yes, sir.
All you would do is just take out the words public safety, and it would say essential employees means employees who've worked at least 100 hours with those dates. And to qualify, they have to be involved in regular in-person interactions and in-person regular physical handling of items that were handled by others. So all you're doing is you're taking out public safety, you're taking it out those two places, and it just says essential employees.
Yes, sir. And
I would ask that you also ask Mr. Eckenroth if he thinks that works, because he spent a lot of time reading the regulations.
Mr. Eckenroth, do you think that works? And This would come from the $5.9 million that we're receiving from the federal government, correct?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
So, public safety is one of those sections that's pretty clear. Healthcare is another one. So I could see why the hospital made the determination that healthcare workers, because that's named as an actual eligible expenditure. The interim rule does say it's essential workers. It does not go through the list to define what every single essential worker is. Some of that discretion is left up to the agency to determine if it was essential or not.
Well, that's what I was referring to, codes, employees, and public
I don't
works.
know if every employee here would be deemed essential under that rule, but you could make a case that there's probably a large majority that are.
Yes, sir.
And it would be more than,
I'm just going to say that also does not include remote work. The ordinance says that it excludes people that worked remotely, so that helps take care of it to make sure that the essential that actually dealt with the public and those requirements. Would that be right, Mr. Eckenroth?
yeah, telework is not eligible. So what it looks like is that the Treasury was trying to frame a structure where if you worked in an isolated environment or home, or you weren't interacting with the public, or you didn't have the extra risk, like, you know, a police officer has to go into a house.
Sure.
Fireman has to go into a house. So if you were isolated from those incidents, it looks like they are trying to make a distinction, and then you would not be eligible for that premium pay.
Okay.
As far as the dollar amount goes, we've run two different scenarios based on when the Treasury deemed the period eligible, and it was just shy of $300,000 for police and fire. I think we have approximately another 120 full-time staff outside of that. So I think you would have to do more than a $70,000 uptick if you wanted to consider the rest of the employees. And I don't know what that exact number is.
Without the finance department being here, it's hard to find that number, but.
Sure, and we're still determining some of the eligibility. That's why I didn't pin a specific number, because I still want to review those numbers with a consultant.
Well, I would think contingent upon the numbers that you come up through with your consultant is what this ordinance should be based on. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yep.
So we have a motion. I haven't heard a second yet.
Second.
A second from Alderman Brown. Alderman Petrelli on this amendment?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So would that also include IT folks? And the reason why I ask is because without the IT department, we couldn't have even kept functioning as a government because there was no way to meet at certain points. So to me, that's essential, regardless if they were working remotely or not, because literally we had our meetings.
I said everyone.
Yeah, so the Treasury's pretty specific that, they're not pretty specific, they're extremely specific that telework or remote work does not count.
So they would be disincluded, is what you're saying?
Unless you could prove that there were interactions over a certain number of hours where it was in-person contact, or they were handling materials that were handled by other people. So there's some gray area. But remote work is specific, remote work and telework is specifically named as being excluded.
What is the minimum hour requirement for touching papers?
So there is a dollar cap per hour, which is $13 per hour. This ordinance states 100 hours, because that would put you at $10 an hour under the $13 an hour cap. So the guidance has two caps. One is hourly at $13, and the other is an aggregate of $25,000. So if you're under either one of those for an eligible employee, so you could be up to $24,950, or you could be up to $12, maybe up to $13 an hour for premium pay, depending on how many hours you want to do, but you can't exceed $25,000.
Okay. So whatever research is needed, I would presume, because I know IT spent a lot of time here setting up our abilities and touching things and meeting with people, that at least be explored. I don't want them to be discounted because they're in IT.
Sure, and, you know, I mean, there's a possibility that we could do a, I mean, public safety that seems very clear.
Right.
Some of the other ones that are gray and may take more time, it's going to take me some time, the consultant some time, to put a plan together, to go through what employees are eligible, to what extent. So, so there could be a way to tackle it, maybe not with this ordinance, but with another ordinance too, because it's going to take a little more time to determine eligibility for those gray areas.
Yeah. Well, just for the record, it is awfully ironic that the one department that kept our government functioning would possibly be disincluded, because we would not have functioned for many, many months without them. So, thank you.
Alderman Petrelli, thank you. Alderman Collins.
I just want to say that I would like for us to do a lot of the work on this in committee, and that, Mr. Eckenroth, I would love to see lists from you. I know there's the 150% of median or mode income for the county, I can't remember, and, taking all of that stuff into consideration, who we would be talking about, if they qualify, or if it would have to come out of our budget, if we did it differently and used exempt versus non-exempt, who that is in the building, because I don't know those things offhand. A lot of different lists and a lot of different options, and bring it to finance and let us dissect all of that. I don't think we can accomplish that in this meeting. I think we should, I'm definitely supporting this, because I do feel like the people in this building held it together for us in a very difficult time. And to say that one form of work is more valuable than another form of work, everybody has contributed, certainly at different levels of risk to themselves. But I'm always in favor of investing and rewarding the people who are working for you. I think that's fundamental. So definitely support this, but I do want to look into the nooks and crannies of it at finance. I don't think we can do all that work tonight. Oh, I support your amendment.
I'm just saying, I'll pull it and bring it back as an ordinance if you like.
In finance.
Or we can amend
Alderman
it
Campbell,
at the second reading.
Hold on. Can you repeat what you said?
I said, would you like to vote on that tonight, or, I'm trying to figure this out, if we need to vote on it tonight or at the second reading, remove it. But I'll be glad to bring it back at the second, or at the next BOMA meeting as an ordinance, working with our city attorney and Mr. Eckenroth to come up with the proper wording to cover all employees in the building. Even if the city has to use the general funds to cover certain employees who might not in the federal government size be essential people during a pandemic. But like Alderman Petrelli said, our IT department did keep this place running and held it together. And like I said, we've got the codes department, the finance department, our planning department, public works, and the
Alderman Campbell, are you withdrawing your proposed amendment?
yes, I'd like to withdraw it and come back with an ordinance for a future date. Yes, sir.
Alderman Brown, you okay with that? I believe you made the second.
Yeah, I agree pretty well with everything you said. I'll withdraw a second and
We'll come back with
something.
Okay. So now I have Alderman Cunningham to speak. Actually, Alderman Robertson, but okay, you're good. Alderman Collins, are you finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go to Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree that all employees should be covered by this, but I don't think we should delay this particular one because of that. It should be a separate ordinance. I mean, I had the pleasure of working for our, for a local financial institution here, and we all had gotten multiple premium benefit pay prior to any of this ARP stuff. And it was at the initiation of the management of the financial institution that I work for that did it, because no matter who we were, whether we were working from home, IT, direct customer interfacing, everybody got some premium benefits several times during 2020. So I agree. It should be a separate ordinance, and I'll support that too. Thank you.
Alderman Cunningham, thank you. We're back to the main motion, which is first reading ordinance 2020-50. Nobody else wishing to speak? All those in favor of first reading ordinance 2021-50, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Now we're on Resolution 2021-53. This is a resolution to call for a public hearing on the proposed annexation of territory into the city of Hendersonville by owner consent and to approve a plan of services for the same property located at 1200 Avondale Road, east of Saundersville Road, and on the south side of Avondale Road in Hendersonville. Alderman Peterson.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second from Alderman Brown. Alderman Peterson, anything on this? Go ahead.
No, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of Resolution 2021-53, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Now we have Resolution 2021-55. This is a resolution accepting the dedication of the completed streets in Stone Ridge, Phase 1, Sections 2, 3, and 4 in Hendersonville. Alderman Peterson.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second from Alderman Campbell. Any discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 2021-55, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. We've already dispensed of item number 10. We're on to reports, our brief committee reports. The first one is an ARPA report. Jesse, can you help us out a little bit, please? Okay, go ahead, Alderman Skidmore.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick thing. What we've been talking about tonight is for the ones that didn't get to the meeting last time, yesterday, that's exactly the reason, the funding and on the issues that we've got. So I would just encourage at our next meeting, which is what? Because due to the length of the meeting tonight.
November 29th.
November 29th is the next time we're meeting to try to get there. I'm telling you, it's so important for us to figure out what we're going to be spending the money on and where we think before we bring it back to this board, where you think the money should be spent in the city of Hendersonville. And it's basically 5.9, is it, how much, 5.9 million? So if you can make it, I promise you it'll be worth your while, but here's even the golden thing. We're only going to be meeting an hour, probably about an hour and a half. And then we skate, we leave here. So that's even better. That's what we're doing. We're staying for about an hour and a half. But if y'all are having a fun time, which we always do in Public Works, we might stay 2 or 3 hours. I don't know. That's what we'll get all our work done in an hour and a half for sure. Thank you very much.
Alderman Skidmore, thank you. Next we have Chairman Brown for a general committee.
You've covered everything tonight. We voted yes or no on it. It was in the general committee, so that's my report.
Chairman Brown, thank you. Chairman Campbell, Public Safety.
No report, sir.
Appreciate that. Alderman Peterson, Planning Commission.
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to yield my time to Director Free, our Planning Director, and also want to give him a shout out for working with the Citizens Committee and giving his guidance to that committee for drawing up our new wards. Thank you very much.
Okay, Keith.
Thank you, Alderman. I'll keep this very brief. We had a very crowded agenda on Tuesday, November the 2nd at the Planning Commission. Several of those items have already come to you this evening. The Music City Studios combined development plan and rezoning. Also, the Nearwater Place that was here this evening for a preliminary development plan. And then also the Nearwater Place and Durham Farms received future land use and transportation plan amendments, setting future land uses for those properties. The Prime Car Wash site plan was approved. Mansker Farms, Phase 19 preliminary plat. Some preliminary plats and plats associated with the Music City Studios, and the rezoning for the 1200 Avondale that came before you this evening, as well as the street acceptance that you just accepted in Stone Ridge. And those are all the items from the Planning Commission.
Keith, thank you. Alderman Robertson, a question on this report?
I do. Keith, is the Durham Farms addition, annexation to Long Hollow going to be on the next BOMA agenda meeting?
Yes, it will. It was on the general committee this evening.
Okay.
And it'll be on the December the 14th BOMA meeting for first reading.
I've had a call from a county commissioner that represents that area.
Yes.
Would you ask someone from Durham Farms to be here so they could answer a question?
Yes, they will be.
They
There
will
a
be. All
representative
right.
from-
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Peterson, thank you. Keith, thank you. Alderman Peterson, Alderman Robertson, thank you. Facility Naming Committee, that's myself, as chairman of that. We have an ordinance that was drawn up by somebody who's pretty smart. That's Alderman Edwards, after several meetings. And he's drawn that up, and I believe you passed it on to our city attorney.
That is on my to-do list.
It's on his to-do list. The committee feels like we have completed our charge, and have that going to the city attorney and then the general committee, and then to the board of mayor and aldermen. So appreciate all those folks, their help on that. Jesse, Chief of Operations report.
I just want to say thank you to Keith and the planning team. As you can see, all the developments that have been coming to Hendersonville, it's a lot of work on his team, and they've done an excellent job. So thank you, Keith. Appreciate that. I received I saw a note the other day about our Parks Department that I wanted to share with the group. And it states, I want to give a huge shout out to Andy Gilly and his team at Hendersonville Parks and Rec. I can't tell you how many parks we've been to in the past several months of travel ball, but in my opinion, our parks outshine them all, and it is because of the folks mentioned above. Yesterday at the USSA Girls Fast Pitch World Series held at Drakes Creek Park, I witnessed the parks team cleaning bathrooms, getting garbage loaded and taken away. You know, the stuff you'd expect. But after each game, I saw them rechalking the infields. After our last game, that was not finished until after 11 p.m., and in the freezing weather, those guys were out there rechalking and raking the fields to prepare for today's games. The reason I'm making a big deal of this is simple. All of the other parks we've been to, none of them compared to the pride our guys take in our parks. These teams had fresh fields after every game. So Andy and the Parks Department, just want to tell you guys thank you. It's great to get reports like this, and I know you work very hard.
Amen to that.
Jason, if you'd pull up the interactive map, I just want to spend a minute to show a map. So if you go to the city's main website, on the home page, there's a projects tab. That's what Jason's clicking on right now. And there's a capital projects tab that you can click on. There's some instructions on how to use this map, and you can click on the map, and the map will get bigger. This is something that our planning department and our public works department have been working on. Our new GIS technician, JP, was instrumental in putting this map together. Ms. Locke, our public works director, put all the information together. So what this allows you or anyone in the public to do is to click on this map, open it up, and you can see all the projects that are currently in our budget right now. So Jason, can you take us to the inline hockey project? So that's going to be the top of your screen, kind of left-hand side, the little blue box up there. So that's the location of the inline rinks, and you can click on it. It'll give you a description of the project. You can scroll through that description. It'll give you some budget information. It'll give you a little thumbnail of the project itself, and then you can click off that, Jason. And then you can see below there's an intersection that has a dot on it and some lines on it as well. This is where there's two projects going on at the same time. That's an intersection, I think a signal timing project. And then if you click on the yellow line, that is that's the Stop 30 roadway improvements there. So you can click on those. All the projects we have in our budget and our plan are on this interactive map. So it's a great tool that you can use if you want to get some information on the maps, and then we'll be updating those quarterly. So anyone from the public can access them, and it's good information that was inputted directly by our Public Works Director that's updated on a quarterly basis. So Sarah and Planning, thank you guys for your work on that, and that concludes my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Jesse. I feel like I put on the agenda.
Oh, okay. Well,
My report was included in your packet, and next we have executive session. This one I'm going to ask you all to do is the board's going to stay here. I need everybody else in the room to go outside the room and close the doors. Jason, you have to do the same thing. You have to shut us off.
yeah,
But
shut us off.
But don't leave the building because we still have to adjourn. There's a small possibility we'll take action. I'm not going to prevent anybody from asking to take action. I can't imagine what that is, but there is that small possibility. So, We have to have Annette here. Are we gone? Okay. We've just come back from executive session to talk about two items and ask questions of our city attorney, and now we're back in general session. Alderman Peterson.
I move for adjournment.
We have a motion to adjourn, a second from Alderman Cunningham. All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously.